Chapter 1191. Xiao Haiqing said provocatively. After looking around the room, she couldn't restrain her disdain. This father of hers wasn't cut out for business at all, but his favoritism was higher than the heavens. In the past, he was able to develop his business mostly because of Jiang Rong's relationship with her family. After that, he offended Jiang Rong and Yun Zhao. Although Jiang Rong didn't dare to divorce him, she definitely wouldn't say anything good about him in front of her family. His business was already going downhill, and without Jiang Rong's help, it only got worse and worse. However, he had always felt that he was very impressive. When Xiao Daoan heard Xiao Haiqing mention the company, he became restless and almost collapsed. All empty? Xiao Daoan asked in return. He was furious. That group of people took my salary and did such a thing. Dad, your company was already an arrow at the end of its flight. Now that something like this happened, only a fool would follow you, Xiao Haiqing mocked, then turned to look at him. But, are you going to the capital? Xiao Daoan was stunned, then he was pleasantly surprised. What do you mean? He quickly said, Haiqing, if it wasn't for me this time, you wouldn't be so popular all of a sudden. Dad promised you that he would buy you a big house in the capital, but now, are you going to invest for Dad? Jing Yun Zhao is so rich, and he even opened Genie Media just for you. You'll definitely have money rolling in the future. It shouldn't be a problem to invest in my company, right? Xiao Daoan said in a low voice. Dad, you really overestimate me. Who am I to Yun Zhao? I'm just a classmate. I begged him for a long time before I could have a foothold. Although he opened a film and media company, it wasn't for me. It was just on the way. Xiao Haiqing wasn't stupid enough to betray Jing Yun Zhao. Didn't he do charity for a long time because of you? The money he threw out now is more than 20 million. That's right, right? Xiao Daoan didn't give up. Xiao Haiqing smiled even more brightly. Because you gave me to James, I got into all that trouble. Do you think that 20 million was given to me for no reason? What a joke. Yun Zhao's money didn't grow on trees. I'm in debt now, and I even promised Yun Zhao to make money for his company for 10 years. Other than a little dead salary, I don't get any benefits at all. Do you understand? How can it be like this? Xiao Daoan must have been furious. Even though he couldn't wait to strangle his daughter to death right now, he already had nothing left. His daughter was stronger than him, so at the end of the day, she should be able to help him in the future. However, he didn't expect Jing Yun Zhao to be so ruthless. Are you stupid? How can you sign this kind of contract? Go and have a talk with her right now. Why should you work for her for 10 years for nothing? Xiao Daoan said angrily. 10 years. The most for Xiao's life. But in the end, she give it all, give it all Tess for it for nothing too. For what? Why? Dad, because he made me turn over a new leaf. Let alone 10 years, even if he makes me promise for a lifetime, I have to agree. Xiao Haiqing lied and casually said, but I still have some friendship with him. I want to ask if you're willing to sell this house and go to the capital to start over. When the time comes, I'll ask him for help. You should have a chance to prove yourself. Chapter 1192. Xiao Haiqing now knew what her father cared about, and she wanted to use the cruelest method to take away what he cared about bit by bit. Hope, disappointment, the cycle repeated itself, just like she had been all these years. Xiao Daoan still had a company in his hands. Although it wasn't doing well, if he sold it now, he might be able to sell it for millions. The only thing left was this house. Although it wasn't big and remote, it was in Ning City, so it was much better than her mother's house. It was estimated that the price would be around $1 million. Other than that, her father liked to collect branded watches. She believed that no matter how bad his business was, he would definitely keep a few for himself. She'll help. From what you said just now, Jing Yunzhao is clearly a stingy person. Xiao Daoan felt uneasy, but he also had some yearning. The capital, that luxurious metropolis, had countless opportunities. He couldn't do it in Ning City, but perhaps he could regain his glory there. I'm not sure about that, but I could try to persuade her. However, if you stay in Ning City, you won't be able to make a comeback in this lifetime. You should still remember how you made Elder Tang unhappy, right? Who would be stupid enough to let you earn money? But the capital is different. There are nobles everywhere. No matter how long Elder Tang's hands are, he won't be able to control you, Xiao Haiqing said. She was only indirectly brainwashing her father, making him believe that his failure wasn't because he couldn't do it, but because of the interference of outsiders. Her father was an extremely arrogant and prideful man when it came to business, so he would definitely be affected. Sure enough, when Xiao Haiqing mentioned it, Xiao Daoan felt some resentment. If he hadn't offended Elder Tang in the past, he wouldn't have had no chance to develop all these years. The capital should be fine, right? Xiao Daoan thought for a moment and glanced at her. Don't think that I won't care about this matter. All these years, you've been ignoring my words. If it weren't for that, things wouldn't have turned out like this. You're an artist, so you should be able to come into contact with many rich and powerful people. Put in more effort, and marrying a good man in the future is better than anything else. Halfway through his words, Xiao Daoan suddenly said, I've been locked up at home for a few days. I don't know how your brother is doing. He didn't come home when he went to school. Did Jiang Rong take him away? Xiao Haiqing smiled. This father finally remembered that he still had a son. She thought that she was inferior to her younger brother, but now it seemed that she had lost not only in terms of gender, but also in terms of her father's character. It was getting worse every year. I don't know, but he should have taken it away, Xiao Haiqing said indifferently. Jiang Rong's 2 children were now in hiding. In a few days, the 2 of them would get a divorce. When the time came, she would send Jiang Rong abroad. However, what would happen after that was not her concern. In short, in her opinion, although Jiang Rong was smart at home, she was nothing once she left that place. She wanted to do well with 2 children alone. It was difficult. Although one of the children was her half-brother from a different mother, but she was only 3 years old. If she sympathized with her brother, who would sympathize with her? She would never raise a tiger cub by her side. Xiao Daoan was feeling uncomfortable right now, so Xiao Haiqing didn't care much about it. After giving him some instructions, she left. After she left, Xiao Daoan contacted the intermediary almost immediately. However, after the incident where he sold the house to Su Wenqing, he was much more careful this time. Chapter 1193. Xiao Daoan's arrangements were more or less done. Xiao Haiqing also let out a sigh of relief, waiting for her father to come to the capital and hit a wall everywhere. Jing Yunzhao was more flamboyant than before. If it was in the past, she definitely wouldn't go around showing off her abilities. But now, what she wanted was a reputation that no one could compare to. Thus, even if there were many discussions about her outside, she still frequently appeared in the red-crowned Crane Hall, proving that her medical skills were not just a rumor. To be a godly doctor, one had to be a famous doctor first. Only then would there be patients coming. As for Shuri Jiao, Jing Yunzhao secretly asked people to find out where she liked to go. Shuri Jiao was born to be a proud young lady. Her usual entertainment activities were more substantial. Apart from shopping for some luxury goods, she was also fond of other activities. From time to time, she would go for a stroll on the cruise ship with others. Occasionally, she would go abroad or take a look at the gambling city. The people around her were all not simple. Other than going out with friends, there would be 2 black-clothed bodyguards by her side at other times. Jing Yunzhao let Song Wen and Song Wu follow Shuri Jiao for a month. They were very clear about her preferences. They also knew that she had a regular habit, which was to go to a restaurant every Wednesday. And when she went to that restaurant, she was almost always alone. As for the reason for going there, Jing Yunzhao also found out. That restaurant was opened by a woman. The woman was in her 40s and had a very handsome son. That woman was the daughter of a good friend of the Li family's old madam, so she also knew the Li family. Jing Yunzhao wanted her to go out alone. This week, it was the appointed day again. The moon was dark and the wind was strong. Dark clouds covered the sky. It was suitable for doing some shady things. The restaurant's location was not eye-catching. It was even located in an extremely dark alley. However, the decorations inside were very romantic. It was because it was quiet that business was good. When it was time, Jing Yunzhao appeared in the restaurant on time. She only felt that the lights here were very weak. She could only vaguely see the faces of people within 3 meters. If it was too far away, it would be a hazy figure. Of course, her night vision was very strong. The darkness did not affect her. However, although the decorations were romantic and there were many couples, for some reason, Jing Yunzhao felt that the atmosphere was very strange and made her uncomfortable. Every time Shuri Jiao came, she would sit in the same position, so Jing Yunzhao also chose the most suitable angle and waited. Sure enough, not long after, the sound of wind chimes came from the entrance of the restaurant. Shuri Jiao walked in wearing an ambiguous black dress and became extremely obedient. "Where's Brother Yanpeng?" she asked the waiter carefully. "Little boss will be here soon. Please wait for a moment." Shuri Jiao nodded. Sipping his coffee, he looked around and waited. Jing Yunzhao's eyes flashed with killing intent. She lightly flicked a small pebble and it hit Shuri Jiao's calf. Shuri Jiao let out a soft cry and quickly bent down to take a look. At this moment, Jing Yunzhao walked towards the door. When she passed by Shuri Jiao's table, she conveniently placed a small pill that could be dissolved instantly into her cup. She rarely used drugs to harm people, but some people had crossed her bottom line. This medicine would not take her life, but it was something that could be used to suppress the Li family. Jing Yunzhao quickly went out of the restaurant. From the window outside, he saw Shuri Jiao sit up straight and drink a few mouthfuls of coffee. He smiled slightly. Things were going well. Just as he was about to leave, he bumped into someone. Jing Yunzhao was stunned. "Cousin Hong. Why are you here?" Chapter 1194. Shen Hong was wearing black clothes and black-rimmed glasses. He stood in the corner of the restaurant's entrance and looked inside. At first glance, it was hard to recognize him. "Cousin, you came here to eat?" Shen Hong's face flashed with a hint of surprise as he asked. Jing Yunzhao shook her head. "Is everything okay?" Shen Hong asked again. Jing Yunzhao couldn't help but feel a little baffled. Under normal circumstances, he should ask about the taste of the dishes in the restaurant. Why did he ask, "You're a girl. Don't stay in such a dark place. It's not safe." Jing Yunzhao was thinking when Shen Hong spoke again. Jing Yunzhao was stunned and thought for a moment. Cousin came here to investigate a case. Shen Hong glanced towards the dining room. Jing Yunzhao followed his gaze and looked over, only to see another man opposite Shuri Jiao. That man was extremely handsome. The pink shirt on his body gave off an even more handsome feeling. Jing Yunzhao admitted that she had seen quite a number of handsome guys before. No matter if it was her second uncle or Li Xiaoyun, they were all outstanding talents. However, the person in the dining room was different. His beauty was a bit gloomy, as if he was a lotus flower that bloomed in the darkness, emitting a red glow, giving people a feeling that he could not be blasphemed. She couldn't believe that there was such a handsome man in the world. Jing Yunzhao's temperament was almost unparalleled. She would never be moved by other people's appearance. However, at this time, she couldn't help but feel attracted by this beautiful appearance. Recently, many girls have gone missing. The places where they went missing are different. After careful investigation, I found that those missing girls had come to this restaurant. I don't think it's a coincidence, so I came to take a look. After Shenhong finished speaking, he sized up Jing Yunzhao again. Unexpectedly, he didn't feel the slightest bit of smoke coming from her. Thus, he smiled and said, "Looking at you, why don't you look like you're here for a meal?" Jing Yunzhao looked away from the man in the restaurant. Her expression was clear. She suddenly understood why she felt the atmosphere in the restaurant was strange. There was a floral scent in the restaurant. The scent was not strong, and she had never smelled it before. She guessed that it was a foreign species. Although she did not know the name of the flower, she felt uncomfortable just by smelling it. She hadn't been in there for long, so she didn't know what effect the flower fragrance would bring. "I'm here for some personal matters." "I've already taken care of them," Jing Yunzhao replied. "By the way, do you know that girl?" Shenhong pointed at Shirijiao and asked. "What's wrong with her?" Jing Yunzhao was puzzled. "It's nothing. I just feel that the man with him gives me a very uncomfortable feeling, so I'm just worried that the girl with him will be in danger." Shenhong lightly frowned, staring at the man called Yan Peng. Jing Yunzhao just smiled. "Don't worry about this. I believe that if something happened to other people, it's impossible for Shirijiao. I came here this time for her, so I secretly checked. She and the restaurant owner are old acquaintances. They come here almost every week. If something happened, it would have happened long ago. Why wait until now? However, there is something wrong with that beautiful man. He should know martial arts. But I didn't find any traces of martial arts on him. Look at those hands. They are very clean. There isn't even a callus." Shenhong shook his head. Chapter 1195. When Jing Yunzhao heard Shenhong's meaning, she just smiled. The martial arts she was talking about were internal martial arts, not the moves that Shenhong learned. Although he was not bad, in front of a real martial artist, he was afraid that he would be somewhat powerless. Internal martial arts was the essence of qi, 4 ounces to 1,000 caddies, maximizing the body's functions. The man in the restaurant had a kind of abnormal smell. His eyes were sharp and focused. When he walked just now, it was like adding a wind. His steps were light and graceful. He definitely knew martial arts. These days, there were not many people who knew martial arts. It was quite rare for such a person to suddenly appear. "Cousin, if you are investigating a case, I think you should try to bring a gun and stay away from that man," Jing Yunzhao reminded. Towards Jing Yunzhao's words, Shenhong had always believed them without a doubt. His expression also became slightly more serious. Furthermore, Jing Yunzhao didn't know much about investigating a case, so she couldn't help him. However, when she thought about the man in the restaurant who knew martial arts, she was a bit worried. After thinking about it, she took out a bottle of medicinal powder from her space. "Cousin, when you go back, soak this powder in water and put it in a spray bottle. If you really encounter danger, spray it a few times. Even if the opponent knows martial arts, as long as he breathes it, it will definitely have some effect. By the way, this is the antidote. You should also keep it." Jing Yunzhao took out a few things and gave it to him to prevent him from misusing it. "Thank you, cousin." Shenhong hurriedly said politely and carefully put away the things. Jing Yunzhao was relieved and left. Jing Yunzhao made up her mind to scheme against Shuri Jiao. After the incident, she secretly let people follow her. As for Shenhong's matter, she threw it to the back of her mind. The medicine she gave Shuri Jiao was a slow-acting poison. There would not be a problem for a while, but there would be subtle changes every day. After Shuri Jiao went back that night, she felt that her skin was a little itchy, but it was not serious, so she did not take it to heart. Although her surname was Shi, her parents also lived in the Li family with Li Wenbo and his wife. Shuri Jiao had always been likable and had a sweet mouth, so she could be called the Li family's living treasure. On the morning of the third day, Shuri Jiao woke up as usual and walked into the bathroom with a sleepy face. However, when she opened her eyes and saw her appearance in the bathroom mirror, she immediately let out an earth-shattering scream that shocked the entire Li family. There were many servants in the Li family. When they heard the commotion, they immediately rushed in. They saw Shuri Jiao holding her head and crying, "Oh! How did I become like this? Grandpa, Grandma. I don't want to become ugly." Everyone was a little puzzled, but after a few seconds, they saw her face. Their hearts suddenly thumped, and they were shocked. Suddenly, there seemed to be some small black moles on her face. The surface area was not large, but there were a few scattered ones. Moreover, the color was pitch black. Perhaps even if she applied a few layers of foundation, it would not be able to hide them. "Miss, are you being pranked by someone? Why don't we wash it first?" A bold man couldn't help but ask. How could anyone grow so many moles in one night? They must have been dotted with ink, right? After being reminded by this person, Shuri Jiao also reacted and hurriedly rushed to the sink. The sound of water splashing could be heard as she continuously washed her face. However, when she saw that the moles were still there, Shuri Jiao's tears instantly flowed out. She could feel that these moles were growing on her face. Even if she touched them lightly, it would hurt a little. Chapter 1196. After a while, everyone in the Li family came to take a look. They were all shocked by Shuri Jiao's appearance. This Li Wenbo was indeed skilled in medicine, but it was very shallow. He might have the ability to treat some colds and fevers, but he didn't have the ability to do so at all. As for the old lady, she didn't know anything about medicine. Li Shuyuan looked at her daughter's face and panicked. She asked in confusion, "Jiao Jiao, what's wrong with you?" "Mom. I don't know. It suddenly grew out, and you see, it's on my body too. Am I terminally ill? Hurry up and help me." Shuri Jiao was going crazy. She cared about her face the most. If she became ugly, how could she face people? Also, the person she liked was the most handsome man in the world. How could her face be worthy of him? Li Shuyuan and Li Shuqi both worked in the hospital. The latter was a genius doctor. She had done many large-scale operations at a young age and had a high reputation. The two sisters looked at Shuri Jiao's situation and couldn't make a decision. In the end, they prepared to take her to the hospital. On the same day, Shuri Jiao was accompanied by her mother and aunt to do all kinds of checkups. They looked at all the internal medicine, surgery, and dermatology, but no one could figure out what was going on. Moreover, in just one day, they could clearly feel that Shuri Jiao's condition was worsening. The black mole on the back of her hand had grown to the size of a fingernail. It was a ghastly sight. Not only that, there were even some slight marks on other parts of her body. They felt that when the time came, those places would also emit a black color. "Oh, little girl, what happened to your face?" When Shuri Jiao's face was filled with despair, an old lady passed by. She looked at her and couldn't help but say, Then, she said sympathetically, I saw you running up and down several times just now. Did you not find anything? If you can't find anything, you can go to see a national medicine doctor. There's a young doctor in the red-crowned crane hall next door. If it weren't for my relatives working here, I would go. At the mention of the red-crowned crane hall, Shuri Jiao suddenly exploded. Who told you to meddle in other people's business? You old bastard. Why are you like this, little girl? I helped you out of kindness. Why are you scolding me? Do you have any manners? When the old lady heard this, she immediately replied with dissatisfaction. The doctors in the immortal crane hall were highly skilled. She was not wrong. Moreover, the medical fees there were slightly cheaper. Who are you calling uncultured? Do I know you? Why are you introducing me to Celestial Crane Hall? Isn't it just a little bastard in there? Why don't you go? Shuri Jiao said angrily. She was already very angry that her face had become like this, but this person still wanted to mention the Celestial Crane Hall in front of her. Was he doing this on purpose? What are you talking about? Old Madam was furious. Their whole family was Little Jing's fans and liked her a lot. How could there be a girl like Little Jing in this day and age? She had good grades, was pretty, and liked to do good deeds. How could she be insulted like this? Let's go. I think a little girl like you deserves to be this ugly. Old Madam's chest heaved up and down. After another shout, she turned and walked directly to the elevator. Shuri Jiao was angered by her words. She felt terrible and covered her face as she started to wail. Li Shuqi went to work. As her mother, Li Shuyuan could not do anything. Why don't we go to the clinic next door? Li Shuyuan could not help but ask. Chapter 1197. Jing Yunzhao's reputation couldn't be obtained for nothing. To be praised so highly, she must have some ability. No matter what, in Li Shuyuan's eyes, even if Jing Yunzhao didn't have the same surname as her, she was still a member of the Li family. Asking her to treat her daughter's illness wasn't something shameful. But when Shuri Jiao thought about how she had to beg Jing Yunzhao, she didn't feel good. Mom, there are so many doctors, how can they not find the cause of my illness? I don't believe it. Shuri Jiao said unhappily. Jiao, this is the first time many people have seen your condition. Maybe they can find the cause, but they can't do it in a short period of time. Look at yourself, the mole on your face is getting bigger and bigger. It looks like if you drag it on for a few more days, it will be really bad. I think you should let Jing Yunzhao take a look at you first, and see what ability she has. Li Shuyuan advised from the side. Everyone said that Immortal Crane Hall's medical skills were high. She wanted to know how good they were. If that Jing Yunzhao could really cure Jiao, then she must have the secret left behind by the Jing family. If she couldn't cure her, then the reputation of Immortal Crane Hall would be lost. Shuri Jiao was full of grievances, but for her face, she decided to endure it for now. But the various examinations took too long. When Shuri Jiao arrived at Immortal Crane Hall, it was the next morning. The number of moles on her face and body had increased. Not only that, they were getting more and more itchy and stinging. After being scratched by her for a night, there were obvious wounds. The medicine was given by Jing Yunzhao, so she naturally knew what the consequences would be. But she didn't expect Shuri Jiao to come so quickly. She thought that she could still hold on for a few more days. There were many patients in Immortal Crane Hall. Even if they came early in the morning, as long as it wasn't an emergency, they would have to wait for a while. After Shuri Jiao entered, she directly rushed to Jing Yunzhao's consultation room. But after a few steps, she was stopped by the medicine boy. May I ask where you are feeling unwell? The medicine boy asked seriously. I'm looking for Jing Yunjiao. She's my cousin. Shuri Jiao said directly. Are you here to see the skin? If it's not an emergency, please wait a moment. There are many people who want to see Dr. Jing. If your illness meets the requirements, we will arrange for her to diagnose you. The medicine boy explained. Almost half of the people who came here were here for Jing Yunjiao. Naturally, she wouldn't be able to satisfy everyone's wishes. As for the other doctors, their medical skills were not bad. After all, they were all from the same school. Shuri Jiao was wearing a mask, but unfortunately, there was a mole on her forehead, which was really scary. At this time, she stared at the medicine boy with a face full of dissatisfaction and said directly, Didn't you hear what I said? I'm her cousin. The person next to me is her aunt. I want to see her now. I'm sorry, I can't. If it's not an emergency, no one is allowed to see him. You can either line up or leave, the medical assistant said immediately. These 2 days, Dr. Jing had specially instructed them. Not to mention her aunt or cousin, even if her grandfather came, they had to wait outside. Shuri Jiao was so angry that she was a little ferocious. Beside her, Li Shuyuan frowned. Her impression of Jing Yunjiao was getting worse. All right, it's useless for you to be angry with this little medicine boy. Anyway, there aren't many people. Just wait first. Since Li Shuyuan had said so, Shuri Jiao could only pout and agree. She sat aside and waited angrily. However, as time passed, she felt that the number of patients in front of her was not decreasing. There were a few times when the medicine boy sent the patients to Jing Yunjiao's consultation room. Moreover, there were obviously more patients queuing at Jing Yunjiao's consultation room than other doctors. It was as if it was intentional. Chapter 1198. Not just Shuri Jiao, even Li Shuyuan was displeased. After all, they had caused such a huge commotion. It was impossible for Jing Yunjiao not to know. Yet, this person did not even show up. That was fine, but now, she was deliberately neglecting them. What's wrong with your red-crowned crane hole? Can't you see that the patients have been waiting for so long? Li Shuyuan said unhappily. If you insist on waiting, Dr. Jing's side will definitely be slow. Her medical skills are high and many patients come to her. But if you can't afford to wait, you can go to another doctor, the medicine boy said bluntly. Li Shuyuan choked and her face turned green. She gritted her teeth and looked inside hatefully. Through the screen, she could vaguely see Jing Yunjiao's figure through the cracks. Shuri Jiao felt uneasy as she helped. From time to time, she would move and scratch her face. After a while, the mask on her face fell off, and more scratches appeared on her face. It was a shocking and ugly sight. In addition, the mother and daughter had a bad temper and looked unhappy, which made many people feel disgusted. Some sharp-eyed patients even recognized Li Shuyuan in private and whispered, "Isn't this the doctor from Mingi Hospital next door? Ophthalmology. I've seen him before." It seems that the doctors in that hospital know that they are useless. Otherwise, why would they come to the red-crowned crane hole? Someone laughed and said, "But it's really strange. Isn't this Dr. Little Jing Mayor Su's niece? Mayor Su just got divorced not long ago and only has one son. How can they be Dr. Little Jing's aunt and cousin? Isn't it obvious that they want to cut the queue by claiming to be relatives?" Someone said. As he spoke, his voice became louder. Li Shuyuan's face turned red. If not for her daughter, she would not have suffered such humiliation here. Her daughter was still young. With the Li family's wealth, she could definitely marry her daughter to a man with the best family background. But once her daughter was disfigured, it would be impossible. Mom. Shuri Jiao bit her lip. Her heart was about to jump out of her chest when she heard the whispers. She had never suffered such grievances. It was bad enough that her face was being pointed at, but she was also being accused of claiming to be relatives. What qualifications did Jing Yunzhao have for her to climb? Jing Yunzhao clearly had the body of a young miss and the life of a maidservant. Her previous life was so lowly and coarse. How could she compare with her? She had wanted to release Xiao Haiqing's incident to let them feel the pain, but she didn't expect that Jing Yunzhao would become so famous. She was already very uncomfortable, and now it was still like this. It was really embarrassing. The mother and daughter waited patiently. Time passed minute by minute. In the blink of an eye, a few hours had passed. From afternoon to dusk. Still, there was no sign of Jing Yunzhao. How long do we have to wait? Li Shuyuan said unhappily as she watched the setting sun shining through the glass door. Ah. You don't know. Today isn't the weekend. Our Dr. Jing has to go to class. She came early, but she only stayed for 2 hours before going to school. Next time, she should wait for another 2 days before coming again. The medical assistant said with a face full of surprise. As soon as these words were said, the mother and daughter pair felt like vomiting to death. Why didn't we see her leave? Shuri Jiao said angrily. Dr. Jing is too popular now. If she left through the front door, she would meet a lot of people, so she left through the back door, the medical assistant said matter-of-factly. In an instant, the mother and daughter's eyes were about to spit fire. Chapter 1199. Li Shuyuan couldn't believe that Jing Yunzhao would be so impolite. She clearly knew that both mother and daughter were waiting at the door, yet she didn't even give them a chance to see each other. If that wasn't enough, she even made them waste an entire day. Mom! That little bastard! She actually did this to me. Shuri Jiao was so angry that she started crying. Although a day wasn't long, it was a kind of torture to her. Her face was completely disfigured, and there were bright red marks under her fingernails. She felt a burning pain on her face. It wasn't easy for her to hold on for so long, but she didn't expect that it was all for nothing. If she had known earlier, she would have asked her grandfather to invite a doctor to take a look. Jiao Jiao, don't cry. Li Shuyuan quickly touched her daughter's head, and her eyes were filled with viciousness. This little bastard actually dared to trick us. Jiao Jiao, let's go back now. There should be some effective anti-itch medicine at home. Use it first. Later, let your useless uncle go and invite her personally. Previously, when Jing Yunzhao refused to go home, although the old man was unhappy, he only thought that she was throwing a tantrum and didn't do anything to Li Tianyi. He could still wait patiently. But this time, she actually went against them so openly. Even if the mother and daughter could still tolerate it, the old man would definitely be furious if he knew. Shuri Jiao was already feeling wronged. Hearing this, she quickly nodded. The mother and daughter had suffered a lot in the Celestial Crane Hall today, and they didn't want to stay any longer. Jing Yunzhao was already mentally prepared. She didn't care about the two of them at all. She didn't go to the Celestial Crane Hall for a few days, and Yu Fu would often tell her about the situation of the Li family. In a short week, the family went there 3 times. The last time they went, they even brought the old man Li Wenbo with them after finding out that she would appear. Unfortunately, it was fake news, and they still came up empty. The effects of the drug were not only limited to her appearance. In the beginning, only black spots would appear on her face. As time went on, the originally slight tingling would become more and more severe, so she would definitely be unable to resist scratching. In the end, the main reason for her disfigurement would no longer be the effect of the drug, but her uncontrollable consciousness. Not only that, after being drugged, it was best not to be too close to the smell of perfume. Otherwise, the itch would worsen, and it might even cause an allergic reaction, causing one to sneeze incessantly. However, Sherry Jiao's body had never lacked the smell of perfume. In a week's time, Sherry Jiao would definitely be tortured beyond recognition. This week, Xiao Haiqing had already moved out of the Su family and continued to work hard on filming. Her previous drama, Palace of Eunuchs, was about to be broadcasted. Because of the huge increase in her fans, this drama also received more attention. Xiao Haiqing wasn't around, and Jing Yunzhao rarely went to the Su family these days. She ate and lived in school, or studied with Professor Mo. Every day, her whereabouts were mysterious. Other than her roommates, very few people could find her after class. Yunzhao, have you heard of the serial murder case? In the dormitory, Ren Xingyue asked curiously. Ren Xingyue was best at mystery or horror novels, so she was very interested in this aspect. When she mentioned it, Jing Yunzhao also remembered. She didn't know if Cousin Hong had found the murderer. I know the little female police officer at the police station. I heard that she had locked onto the target, but the target escaped. Soon, she will be wanted in the city. Ren Xingyue said again. Chapter 1200. When Jing Yunzhao heard that the murderer was confirmed, she was surprised. You know who the murderer is? The suspect is a very good-looking man. 2 days ago, there was a policewoman following him. As a result, because the other party was too handsome, she let her guard down and was killed. Fortunately, another police officer arrived and the evidence was not destroyed. Unfortunately, I heard that the suspect's methods are quite clever. I'm afraid it's impossible to find him in a short time. Ren Xingyue sighed. When she was writing, she liked to collect material from everywhere, and the best material in the world was reality. Therefore, she tried to curry favor with a few police officers at the police station and maintained a good relationship with them. Usually, she could find out about some strange cases. Is there anyone else injured? Jing Yunzhao quickly asked. I don't know. Ren Xingyue shrugged and was silent for a while. Seeing that she was deep in thought, she asked, What's wrong? Do you know the murderer? Jing Yunzhao shook her head. After a while, she called Shen Hong. Unfortunately, his phone was turned off, and she couldn't help but worry. After all, Shen Hong was her cousin and her uncle's only child. No matter what, she had to be more careful. After thinking about it, Jing Yunzhao grabbed her bag and coat and called a taxi to Shen Tong's place. Shen Tong had some assets and lived a very comfortable life. The house wasn't big, but it was very exquisite. It was quiet and warm. When Jing Yunzhao arrived, she pressed the doorbell several times, but she didn't expect her uncle to open the door. Su Yuantek looked at Jing Yunzhao and suddenly felt guilty. She looked a little embarrassed. Zhao, why are you here? Uncle. I should be the one asking you why you're here. I just called my cousin, but his phone was turned off. I think he's not home from work yet. Then, isn't this house? Shen Tong was alone. Jing Yunzhao's eyes were smiling, while Su Yuan's face was slightly embarrassed. After letting her in, Jing Yunzhao realized that there was no one in the living room. She blushed slightly. Am I disturbing you? Why don't I leave? What are you thinking about? Su Yuantek was speechless. He quickly explained, Your cousin has been busy catching the serial killer these past few days. Shen Tong is sick and has a high fever. The nanny has also asked for leave, so I dropped by to take a look. Jing Yunzhao said with a drawn-out "oh," with an ambiguous look in his eyes. You're just here to visit a patient. I thought you'd be so quick. Su Yuantek's old face was about to crumble. He was a man in his 40s, nearing his 50s. Being teased by a little girl like this, he felt somewhat embarrassed. If it were someone else in the room, they might not feel that way. But Shintong was different. Because she was different, she felt guilty. Jing Yunzhao was happy to see Aunt Tong and his first uncle. He went into the bedroom to take a look and saw Shintong lying on the bed in a daze. She looked very weak. There was still some warm porridge on the table next to her. It was probably cooked by his first uncle. She should be fine after sleeping for a while. What's the matter? Are you looking for your cousin? Su Yuantek asked. Jing Yunzhao heard something different in her first uncle's words. It was as if he was afraid that she would disturb Shintong's recuperation. However, this was not enough to make her jealous. After all, Shintong was now the woman in her first uncle's heart. It was natural for him to be protective of her. Jing Yunzhao smiled and narrowed her eyes slightly. First uncle, have you forgotten that I'm a doctor? Chapter 1201. Su Yuantek was stunned and his body was a little stiff. He really forgot about this. After all, this niece was too young, he would always unconsciously ignore her ability. Then, you take a look at her. Su Yuantek stepped aside. Jing Yunzhao had plenty of ways to deal with small illnesses like high fever. After checking on Shintong's condition, she took out a small pill from her bag. It was naturally impossible for the pill to take effect the moment it was ingested, but Jing Yunzhao's medicine was definitely better. Once Shintong woke up from her sleep, she should be fine. Cousin Hong, do you know the background of the murderer that you want to investigate? I checked the restaurant where the murderer stayed before. The female boss seems to have some relationship with the Li family. After feeding the medicine, Jing Yunzhao asked. Ren Xingyue said that the murderer was very handsome. It was most likely the man called Yan Ping that Shuri Jiao saw. I talked to your cousin a few days ago. The owner of the restaurant is surnamed Ruan, called Ruan Xiaoxia. She is the adopted daughter of Li Wenbo and Lin Feng. If your father didn't get together with Xianlan, he would have married her. To put it simply, she is the childhood sweetheart and child bride that the Li family found for your father decades ago. But because of your father's resistance, her existence became a joke and then disappeared without a trace. In fact, I didn't expect her to hide in such a secluded place and open a restaurant. As for her son, he is not her biological son. Ruan Yenping's father is a man with hereditary mental illness and his mother is a fool. Both of his parents are dead. Su Yuantek said. Jing Yunzhao was a little surprised. He didn't expect his father to have a childhood sweetheart. This Li Wenbo was also interesting. His son was just born and he found a child bride to accompany him. He was afraid that it was not to take care of his son, but to control him in the future. Moreover, such a woman raised in the Li family must be a bit cowardly by nature and will have a sense of fear towards the Li family. As a result, she will certainly not be able to persuade his father to change his name. What about father? What was his attitude towards this person? Do you think that Ruan Xiaoxia is your sister or? Jing Yunzhao pondered. Her. She can be considered a younger sister. Su Yuantek said, and then said in detail, I have seen Ruan Xiaoxia a few times. She is very beautiful, which is why Li Wenbo wanted her to be his child bride. Back then, after Li Tianyi was captured from Huaning County, he was supposed to have a wedding with Ruan Xiaoxia after his legs were healed. However, because of my interference in your father's own intentions, his legs were completely crippled and his lower body was completely paralyzed. Even if he were to get married, he wouldn't be able to carry on the Li family's bloodline. Jing Yunzhao nodded. She had never seen this person before, and she wasn't sure if she would have any dealings with him in the future. However, it wouldn't be wrong to inquire about him in advance. By the way, that Ruan Yanping can be considered half of your father's son. When he was young, your father doted on him quite a bit. Su Yuantek added. When Jing Yunzhao heard this, he was a little incredulous. Isn't that serial killer? Because Ruan Xiaoxia has always been with your father, she also has some medical skills. Usually, when your father treats and saves people, she has to be by his side most of the time, acting as a small assistant. That Ruan Yanping was saved by your father and her together. Su Yuantek added. Chapter 1202. Jing Yunzhao understood at this time, but after thinking about it carefully, she couldn't help but wonder whether Ruan Yanping killed because of his mental illness or because of his mother, Ruan Xiaoxia. A light suddenly flashed in her mind, and Jing Yunzhao walked into Shenhong's house. The decoration of the house was very simple, but it could be seen that he was a strict and clean person. The only eye-catching thing should be the stack of information on the table. Jing Yunzhao walked over and opened it to take a look. Finally, her eyes locked on the photos. They were all photos of recent victims. They were all very beautiful. Are you interested in this case? Su Yuantek smiled and said, now the suspect is wanted everywhere. It shouldn't take long for him to be caught. This case is quite serious. Once he is caught, the sentence will definitely be heavier. The girl in this photo looks similar to your mother when she smiles. Su Yuantek suddenly paused and said. Then, she thought of something and quickly flipped through a few more times to look at all the photos. Jing Yunzhao's suspicions had always been heavy, so she purposely came to take a look. However, reality proved that her thoughts were actually correct. These victims should be somewhat similar to my mother, right? It's either the smile, the eyes, or the nose. Even if it's 20 to 30% similar, he didn't let it go. Jing Yunzhao said with a sneer. Yes. Su Yuantek nodded and pointed to the information of one of them. Look at this, not only are the eyes similar, but also has a small dimple on the face. It's the closest, and the degree of her victimization, not only was she violated, but there were scars all over her body. It was a shocking sight, especially on the face. The wound was hideous. The murderer seemed to want to cut off the whole face, which showed the deep hatred. But it didn't make sense because the murderer was just a child saved by his father. Even if he had resentment for stealing his father's mother, it couldn't be too serious. This Ruan Xiaoxia seems to have not given up after so many years. Zhao, Ruan Yanping's father, has hereditary mental illness, and his mother is still a fool. Think about it. Even if he is a normal person, he should have mental pressure. If Ruan Xiaoxia instigated him, what would happen to him? He would definitely break down more easily than ordinary people. You have to be careful. The person hasn't been caught yet. Once he sees your appearance, I'm afraid he'll kill you. Su Yuantek reminded him. It's okay. Cousin is so busy trying to catch him that he can't even go home. I think it's better to use me. Jing Yunzhao suddenly felt a chill down his spine. Uncle, that person should have known of my existence a long time ago. Su Yuantek's expression also changed. Indeed, it was not a secret that Jing Yunzhao recognized his family. As long as the mother and daughter knew that Su Xianlan gave birth to a daughter, regardless of whether the daughter looked like her, they would probably want to kill her. In addition, because of the recent news about Jing Yunzhao's company and medical skills, she had become a hot topic. Almost everyone knew about her, and her photos were also circulating on the internet. Although most of the photos were blurry due to the Su family's control, her silhouette could still be seen clearly. Have you felt anything wrong recently? Su Yuantek asked with concern. Jing Yunzhao shook his head. Jing Yunzhao didn't believe that the Li family was completely unaware of the mother and son of the Ruan family. Ruan Yanping had learned martial arts and could be used. Maybe he would even be used as an assassin by the Li family. Chapter 1203. Jing Yunzhao's eyes flashed. She didn't stay any longer and immediately left the place. Before leaving, Jing Yunzhao said, "Uncle, you should add more people here. Ruan Yanping's martial arts aren't weak. If he's really following me in the dark, I might not be able to discover him. If he finds out that you and I are here, it won't be good for Aunt Tong and cousin." Uncle had personally killed Li Wenbao's other son. If she were Li Wenbao, she would think of a way to avenge her son's death. How could she live in peace? In the past, Siyu was too useless, so Li Wenbao might not have cared. However, once he found out that Shen Hong was Uncle's son, he would definitely not tolerate it. After leaving the district, Jing Yunzhao deliberately took a long detour. She didn't call for a taxi. Instead, she walked to a sparsely populated alley. She even stayed until the middle of the night. She could keenly sense the surveillance of ordinary people, but it was relatively more difficult for people who knew martial arts. Thus, she focused her attention and felt all the movements around her. The footsteps were light and heavy. Occasionally, there would be a few people. However, as the night grew darker, it became especially quiet. It was so quiet that it made one's scalp tingle. Her hearing was extraordinary. After all, she rarely went out in the past, so she didn't think too much. Thus, she would often overlook some things. However, at this moment, after Jing Yunzhao calmed down, it didn't take long for her to feel a strange aura around her. Her footsteps slowly came to a stop. The other party's aura was stable, and his footsteps were slow and almost silent. However, if she carefully sensed it, there was a faint killing intent. Jing Yunzhao simply stopped and stared at the corner. "How long have you been following me?" The other party had been following her for so long. It was impossible that he had been following her closely just to see what she did. He had a past of serial killings. His violent and restless nature was definitely in his blood. If he wanted to kill her, this person might not have any connection with the Li family and shouldn't be under the Li family's control. However, if he wanted to capture her and leave, then it was different. Shuri Jiao's face had been disfigured for a week. Li Wenbao had probably thought of all the methods he could think of. He would definitely want him to take action, so it was impossible for him to take her life. Moreover, she wasn't stupid. Old physician Yu Fu had said that the Jing family had a secret medical book. Now that her medical skills were so high, it would be strange if the old man didn't have his eyes on the medical book. After all, he had taken everything in the Jing family but couldn't get the inheritance. How could his heart not be itching? As soon as Jing Yunzhao's voice fell, the surroundings fell silent. After a while, a figure walked out. It was Ruan Yanping. This person was indeed good-looking, but he was too gloomy. Especially in the darkness, he seemed a little perverted. His face was strangely pale, and his eyes were bloodshot. The color of his lips was as if he had just sucked blood. It was especially horrifying. "You know martial arts." The other party went straight to the point, but then added, "But you might not be able to beat me." As he spoke, he pulled out a gun from his waist. Speaking of guns, Jing Yunzhao also had one. However, it had always been in the space and had never been used. That gun had been given to him by Li Xiaoyun. Jing Yunzhao's eyes darkened. "What do you want?" "I want to send you to see your vixen mother, but..." Ruan Yenping sneered. You are still useful. Jing Yunzhao instantly understood. As expected, this mother and son were still connected to the Li family. They were actually Li Wenbao's dogs that could kill. Chapter 1204. Jing Yunzhao entered a defensive state, staring at Ruan Yenping in front of her. Ruan Yenping very confidently walked over, raised his hand, and directly aimed the gun at Jing Yunzhao. However, in the dead of night, Jing Yunzhao believed that Ruan Yenping was not that stupid. If he couldn't kill her in one shot, shooting now would be cutting off his escape route. She was the same. Whether or not this person was sent by the Li family, she had to make sure he couldn't escape. Otherwise, who knew how many people would be killed by him in the future? But she was still a little curious. Where did this man learn his martial arts from? Li Wenbao was just an accessory of the Jing family. It was impossible for him to know many hidden experts. At this time, Ruan Yenping was really just putting on a show with the gun. The next moment, he jumped over. His speed was extremely fast, the wind from his palm directly chopped towards her, and the gun in his other hand was instantly replaced with a sharp blade, the cold light flashing. The killing intent was ready. Jing Yunzhao dodged to the side, and backhandedly grabbed the man's shoulder blade. The man's body shrank, as if there was wind under his feet. In the blink of an eye, he dodged. Since her rebirth, she had fought many times, but the opponents were basically ordinary people or some small hoodlums. This was the first time she dealt with a man who really knew martial arts. This person's methods were not bad, or it should be said that he was extremely talented in martial arts. His concentration was very focused, his reaction was also very sensitive, and most importantly, his eyes were vicious. His mind was probably only thinking about winning her, suppressing her, so he acted as if he had the help of God. Jing Yunzhao was not bad. Every move was aimed at his weak point. The sound of fist colliding continuously came. The fine dust under her feet seemed to be shaken up. Ruan Yenping obviously did not expect Jing Yunzhao's methods to be so high, a bit strenuous, his heart ruthless, no longer holding back, directly killing. He had some mental problems. If Jing Yunzhao cooperated, he could still endure the anger and do as he was told, but now Jing Yunzhao fiercely resisted. Suddenly his blood was stimulated, his eyes staring at Jing Yunzhao's face, full of resentment. You lowly vixen, watch how I slice off your flesh piece by piece. His voice was as cold as steel. Jing Yunzhao had been learning martial arts for quite some time. Even though she was a little apprehensive, she didn't think that she would lose. She immediately countered the opponent's attack. This person's strength was extremely high, causing her arms to feel a little numb. However, with a fierce tug, Ruan Yenping's arm was directly dislocated. Who did you learn martial arts from? Jing Yunzhao asked with a cold look in his eyes. You think you can interrogate me? Ruan Yenping said coldly. After being forced into a corner, he directly took out the pistol. Suddenly, a series of bang-bang sounds rang out, shaking people's hearts. Jing Yunzhao's figure appeared several times in a row, but he was unscathed. He took out a few inconspicuous stones from the space and directly threw them over. Ruan Yenping's kung fu was good, and he also had some ability to dodge, but he could not avoid the silver needles mixed in with the stones, which directly hit his wrist. In an instant, the pistol fell to the ground. He saw that the situation was not right, and quickly turned to escape. At this time, there was a figure behind Ruan Yenping. Li Xiaoyun suddenly appeared from the darkness, and there were 3 black and yellow wolf dogs beside him. Li Xiaoyun raised his hand, and the 3 dogs rushed out in an instant, directly biting Ruan Yenping. Jing Yunzhao was dark, and could not help but click her tongue. He was really lucky. One of Ruan Yenping's arms was removed by her, and the other wrist was pierced by a silver needle. He appeared at this time, but it seemed that he had just performed a hero saving the beauty. Chapter 1205. No matter how powerful Ruan Yenping's martial arts were, he was still a human after all. In the dark, he was surrounded by people from both sides. He couldn't use his arms, so he suddenly felt a little powerless. In addition, the three dogs were extremely fierce. After pouncing on him, they bit him with a "gotcha" sound. They didn't even make a sound. It was too direct. Within a few seconds, his whole body had fallen to the ground. He was in a sorry state, sweating profusely, and his trousers were bleeding. Seeing these three dogs, Jing Yunzhao also felt a little numb in her scalp. She didn't go forward. Li Xiaoyun slowly walked up with a trace of a smirk on his face. Bite a few more times. There is no other meat to eat tonight, he said softly, but it made people feel cold. The dogs seemed to be able to understand his words. Immediately, the three dogs became even more ferocious, as if they were fighting for food. Ruan Yenping's cries were extremely mournful, causing the lights in the surrounding residences to be lit up. How did you find this place? Jing Yunzhao was secretly surprised. Today, she had been running around the small roads nearby for a long time, yet she hadn't told anyone about her location. How could he? Jing Yunzhao thought for a moment, looked at the dogs, and pointed. It's them. Yes, these dogs are called battle wolves. Number 1, number 2, and number 3. They are very obedient. No one can compare to their ability to find people. Li Xiaoyun narrowed his eyes and smiled. He looked like a serious gentleman with a smile, but he always felt a little smug. Even if you don't come, I can still control this person. Jing Yunzhao couldn't help but roll her eyes. He only arrived after the battle was over. She really wondered if all his military achievements were obtained by picking up scraps. What are you thinking about me for? Li Xiaoyun saw through her heart at a glance and laughed. You said you were so bored today. You've wandered around all the nearby places, haven't you? I got 3 battle wolves and spent more than half an hour to find you. His wife was truly an extraordinary person. Her phone was turned off, so he couldn't find her. He asked Su Yuantek and found out about the serial killer. He immediately checked the information and found out that the killer was good at martial arts. At that moment, he was really afraid that she wasn't good enough. But he didn't expect that when he found her, she had just shown her power and beaten the killer to a pulp. Since he was already here, he couldn't expect her to deal with him before he showed himself, right? Jing Yunzhao pursed his lips and smiled. Is the quest over? He asked. Okay. Li Xiaoyun was also helpless, and his voice softened. Did it go well? Jing Yunzhao asked again. Then, he sniffed. There's the smell of medicine and blood. Are you injured? Your nose is comparable to a werewolf's. In the future, I might as well bring you along when I do quests. Li Xiaoyun was a little speechless. He reached out and smoothed her hair. It's just a small injury. I've almost recovered. Jing Yunzhao was slightly angry, but he didn't say anything. He turned to look at the person on the ground. Who taught you martial arts? I'll give you one last chance. Are you going to tell me or not? Jing Yunzhao said coldly. Ruan Yenping's face was very pale. His handsome face looked like this at this time. I don't know. I'm only responsible for learning. Jing Yunzhao raised his eyebrows. He didn't feel that his tone was a lie. The thunderous gunshots and Ruan Yenping's shrilled cry naturally attracted some people. But after seeing the blood through the faint light, someone immediately called the police and didn't approach. Jing Yunzhao was also worried that he would be able to escape after entering the police station. After thinking about it, he used silver needles to seal a few of his acupuncture points. The dogs' mouths were still stained with blood. It was a little scary. Jing Yunzhao couldn't help but feel a little apprehensive. Not long after, a police car arrived. Chapter 1206. Because the murderer of this serial murder case had not been caught, the police had been particularly nervous recently. As soon as they heard the people report that they heard gunshots, they immediately sent a task force. So Jing Yunzhao just happened to meet Shenhong. When Shenhong saw that Jing Yunzhao was actually present, he was so surprised that he couldn't speak. He stared at the ground and didn't know whether to be surprised or happy. This person. How did you meet him? Didn't I tell you a few days ago to not go to this kind of dark place? Shenhong was helpless. This little girl was really disobedient. Fortunately, this person was not his real cousin, otherwise, he was afraid that he would have to worry about her every day. She was really a little girl who didn't listen to advice. He followed me. It's not my fault. Jing Yunzhao pursed her lips and said innocently. Then she said, you should take this person back. The case is so serious, you should give the people an explanation. If not, she would have sent this person to the space before Li Xiaoyun came and slowly interrogated him. Even if she couldn't understand, she had to remember all of this person's martial arts. If she met another person who knew martial arts in the future, she would have some comparison in her heart. But which of you two caught him? His arm is also broken. It's not possible to only rely on 3 dogs, right? Shenhong muttered again. After that, he glanced at the 3 dogs. Suddenly, he had goosebumps all over his body and wanted to stand up. At a glance, he knew that these dogs must have grown up eating raw meat. Their eyes were fierce when they looked at people. Their mouths were stained with blood and they were still drooling. If the dog owner wasn't there, he absolutely believed that they would immediately pounce on him and tear him apart. My family's Zhao did it. Li Xiaoyun reached out and held Jing Yunzhao's shoulder with a proud face. Shenhong looked at Jing Yunzhao in surprise. Really? This person is a martial arts master. I have fought with him. If it wasn't for the medicine you gave me, I'm afraid I would have died. Jing Yunzhao was just a little girl. It was hard to imagine that she had such explosive power. But at this time, he also remembered that Mayor Su seemed to have told him that this cousin of his knew some martial arts. But because Mayor Su's eyes flickered a little when he said this and his face was full of disbelief, he didn't take it to heart. What a pity. It would be great if he could see it with his own eyes. By the way, this is... Shenhong helped his colleague to ask a few questions. When he was about to leave, he suddenly remembered that he had no impression of the man beside Jing Yunzhao. Moreover, because she had been following this case for the past few days, she was more or less afraid of beautiful men. Although the man in front of him was not the same type as Ruan Yanping, he seemed to make him feel a sense of danger, or even more so. It was a ferocious aura. Could it be another criminal? Shenhong's gaze was scrutinizing. Jing Yunzhao looked at him and felt that he was exactly the same as her second uncle, but with some maturity and calmness of her first uncle. He is my boyfriend, Li Xiaoyun. He just happened to come to me and did me a big favor. Jing Yunzhao specially squinted and praised him. You're welcome. Li Xiaoyun approached and said without hesitation. The two of them looked at each other with a trace of gentleness that was different from when they faced others. Shenhong suddenly felt that he was a third wheel. He laughed dryly and said, "So it's Mr. Li. I wonder, what do you do?" Chapter 1207. Shenhong seemed to have made up his mind to get to the bottom of it. He was curious and concerned, but his expression was as polite and gentlemanly as ever. In addition, he was a few years younger than Li Xiaoyun, so he looked like a well-behaved and outstanding younger brother in front of him. Li Xiaoyun thought for a while and said seriously, "I'm currently just a man living off a woman." The mission was over. He never had a so-called job, and those missions didn't necessarily require his presence. Moreover, they were just his personal interests. As for the businesses that he invested in, he didn't need to worry about them. They weren't even considered jobs. For him, the biggest job at the moment was Jing Yunzhao in front of him. Shenhong's eyelids twitched when he heard that. Unemployed. How do you know each other? Cousin, don't listen to his nonsense. He's a soldier, but he's currently on vacation. Don't worry, he won't do anything bad. Jing Yunzhao saw Shenhong's worry and said directly. However, Shenhong still looked at him with a scrutinizing gaze. He had to say that this man didn't look like a good person, especially the way he smiled. It seemed polite and decent, but it gave people a very unconventional feeling. There was a sense of insidious déjà vu coupled with his appearance. He couldn't help but think of him as a flower thief. Of course, he wasn't called a flower thief these days, soldier. Shenhong muttered to himself. I wonder which military region you're serving in. This is a secret. You have no right to know. Li Xiaoyun said directly. He had always been good at judging people. In the past, his appearance had caused many people to point fingers at him. Now, looking at Shenhong's attitude, he knew that he didn't think of him in a good light. His appearance was innate. He couldn't change it. Shenhong choked and knew that he had overstepped. I'm sorry. Maybe it's because of this murder recently, I've been a little too sensitive. Li Xiaoyun glanced at him and didn't say anything. Jing Yunzhao chatted with him for a while more and followed the police car to the police station. He didn't miss any of the necessary statements. With Li Xiaoyun by his side, he didn't feel bored. However, just as he stepped out of the police station, he was greeted by Shuri Jiao again. This time, other than her, there was an old lady and a woman. This was the first time Jing Yunzhao had seen them, but when he felt the aura of the old lady, he immediately knew who she was. The reason why the three of them came to the police station was definitely because of Ruan Yanping. She had seen Li Shuyuan before, so the extremely beautiful woman in the middle couldn't be her. Li Shuqi was only 27 or 28 years old, so she could also be ruled out. The only one left was Ruan Xiaoxia. Ruan Xiaoxia was indeed extremely beautiful. Although she was already in her 40s, she was even prettier than Shintong. Her beauty was not reserved, and there was a glimmer of light between her eyebrows. Her eyes were very seductive, and she had an oval face with willowy eyebrows and thin lips. Although she was not young, her skin was very tight and beautiful. At most, she looked like a woman in her 30s. Not only that, but her figure was also very good. She could even compete with a young person like Shuri Jiao. He couldn't help but admire Li Wenbo's thoughts. He arranged for such a stunning beauty to be by his son's side. Generally speaking, as long as her father, Li Tianyi, was a little less resolute, his soul would have been taken away by this woman. It was a pity that no matter how beautiful a beauty was, there would always be a day when she was past her prime. She could still be so beautiful at the age of 40, but what about after that? She would eventually wither. Chapter 1208. Putting aside Ruan Xiaoxia, Jing Yunzhao was also shocked by Li Wenbo's second wife, Lin Feng, because this person no longer looked young. Her body was fat, and her face had some wrinkles, but she was still energetic. It was just that her eyes were not very good, and always had a kind of aggressive feeling. Seeing Jing Yunzhao, Shuri Jiao immediately rushed up, and couldn't wait to give her a slap. Unfortunately, before she could touch Jing Yunzhao, she was directly kicked out by Li Xiaoyun. You! Who are you? When the old lady saw that her granddaughter was wronged, she immediately angrily pointed at Li Xiaoyun. The Li family was not unknown, but in these years, Li Xiaoyun rarely appeared in front of the public, so many people in the upper class did not recognize him, and did not even remember his existence. After Li Xiaoyun kicked Shuri Jiao, he also pretended to rub his leather shoes on the ground, as if his feet were dirty. The three battle wolves beside him immediately glared at them fiercely, scaring the three women. The three of you are here to see the perverted murderer, right? Jing Yunzhao did not hide his ridicule at all. When Lin Feng heard this, a trace of anger flashed in his eyes. You are Jing Yunzhao, right? I am your grandmother. When you see an elder, you actually greet me. Sure enough, you have stayed outside for too long, and have no manners at all. Your family's Jiao Jiao has a good upbringing. Like a mad dog, she rushed up and wanted to bite me. She is really carved out of the same mold as you, old lady. With such a family style, I am really envious and admiring. Jing Yunzhao directly replied. The old lady was so angry that her chest fiercely twitched. Jing Yunzhao. You deliberately avoided me these days. Shuri Jiao immediately said. At this time, Shuri Jiao's face was covered with a silk scarf, and she also wore a mask and sunglasses. She really wrapped herself up tightly, and even her body was covered with a pair of gloves and long-sleeved clothes. There was not a bit of flesh on her body, and it was obvious that she was afraid that her terrifying appearance would be seen by others. From what you're saying, you've looked for me. Jing Yunzhao smiled and swept her gaze over Shuri Jiao. It was as if she could see the black spots and bloodstains on her clothes, causing Shuri Jiao's entire body to tremble. She then continued, You're looking for me, so I have to appear and accompany you. Who do you think you are? You! Don't be arrogant. Don't you care about your father anymore? Let me tell you, he hasn't eaten anything for a few days. Who knows when he will starve to death? Shuri Jiao said. She really hated it to death. Her grandmother had clearly said that Jing Yunzhao would be able to return to the Li family very soon. At that time, she would be able to do whatever she wanted, but an accident suddenly happened. Not only that, the man she liked had actually turned into a serial killer. How was that possible? Big brother Yan Peng was so handsome and gentle. She had known him since she was young, but she had never seen him show any cruel side. Someone must have made a mistake. But now that she saw Jing Yunzhao, she immediately understood. It must be her. She must have known that she liked big brother Yan Peng, so she wanted to harm him. When Jing Yunzhao heard about her biological father, she felt a bit of anger in her heart, but in the blink of an eye, she smiled. Even a vicious tiger won't eat its cubs. If Li Wenbo can even cause my father's death, then he deserves to die without any descendants. Thinking about it carefully, I wonder if this is retribution. Old madam, I heard that your youngest son died quite miserably. What did you do to anger the heavens that retribution fell on him? Chapter 1209. Li Wenbo's son, Li Juanrui, who had already passed away, was Lin Feng's only son. He was the apple of her eye, the apple of her eye. She had loved him for more than 10 years, but he suddenly died. Although a lot of time had passed, every time she thought about it, Lin Feng's heart would still ache. If her son was still alive, he would be 35 years old by now. She was afraid that he would have given birth to several grandchildren by now. This Jing Yunzhao, how dare he say that she had done something evil and received retribution? It was obviously her shameless uncle who did it. The old lady breathed a sigh of relief. Little girl, your mouth is indeed very stubborn. However, even though your father is the son of the Lee family, he is now just a cripple. Our family has raised him for so many years, what's wrong with killing him now? He is just a useless person who doesn't even have the ability to carry on the family line. What's the use of keeping him? If you want to harm my father, that's up to you. Anyway, I only know that if something happens to my father, your precious granddaughter won't be able to live either. Jing Yunzhao smiled coldly and walked over. She stared at Shuri Jiao and said cruelly, "How stupid are you to think that the problem on her face is an illness?" "What do you mean?" Shuri Jiao exclaimed. "The literal meaning, don't you understand?" Jing Yunzhao raised her eyebrows. "Your face was ruined by me personally. In this world, only I can save you. But whether or not I can do it depends on whether you can satisfy me or not. It's you." Shuri Jiao was so angry that she panicked. "You're lying. Impossible, how could you do it? I have never seen you before." "Are you sure? In the restaurant you go to every week, I personally poisoned you." Jing Yunzhao directly told her the advantage of being injured. When Shuri Jiao heard this, she quickly tried to recall, but no matter how hard she tried, she still couldn't remember seeing her. However, after thinking about the only suspicious point before and after being poisoned, she finally had a slight impression of her. In the past, every time she went to that restaurant, she didn't interact with anyone other than the waiter and big brother Yan Peng. Only once did she feel a sudden pain in her leg. When she lowered her head, she felt that someone walked past her. At that time, she smelled a very light medicinal fragrance, but when she looked up, the person had already left. She only saw the back of the person. At that time, she felt that it was somewhat familiar, but because the restaurant style was relatively dark, she thought that her eyes were playing tricks on her and didn't think too much about it. Now it seemed that the reason why she was poisoned was probably because of that. Jing Yunzhao. "How can you be so vicious?" Shuri Jiao said with red eyes. "In terms of viciousness, I'm not as vicious as you, nor as vicious as any of the 3 generations of you." Jing Yunzhao chuckled. "What do you want? What do you want? How much do you want to treat my illness?" Shuri Jiao asked again. Jing Yunzhao glanced at the old lady at this time. "If you want her to be cured, it's very simple. Send my father out of the Li family and tell everyone that my father's surname is Jing, not Li." Li Wenbo might not agree to this condition. However, he had to agree even if he didn't want to. "Impossible." Lin Feng rejected directly. "Your father is a descendant of the Li family. His father's surname is Li. In this world, there's no such thing as a son following his mother's surname. If Li Wenbo didn't break his promise, do you think you would still be here? Must have the surname Li. What a joke. Others have that qualification, but Li Wenbo doesn't." Chapter 12:10. After Jing Yunzhao finished speaking, she walked past the 3 people with Li Xiaoyun. After taking 2 steps, she paused and turned around to add, "Don't use my father's life to threaten me. I don't care about anything else compared to the Jing family. Besides, he's willing to be with my mother forever." Her father had kept his chastity for so many years and even agreed to cripple his legs in order to go against the family's wishes. Why would he care about his life? Besides, living in the Li family for so many years was no different from being dead. Also, before finding her mother's body, he could still think that she was still alive and could continue to wait for her. However, if one day her father knew the truth, how much would he want to live? Although she had only seen her father that one time, at that moment, she knew what a father and daughter's hearts were connected. They had the same goal, so she understood. Lin Fang's eyes widened. She couldn't believe that Jing Yunzhao would say such treacherous words. Either you change your surname or another member of the Li family dies. Choose. This time, it's Shuri Jiao who's unlucky. Next time, it might be you, Lin Feng. You know that I have the Jing family's secret technique in my hands. The Jing family's medical skills are amazing and they also have the ability to harm people. It's possible for me to make you disappear from this world without anyone knowing. After Jing Yunzhao said that, she left. Her words weren't just a bluff, they were the truth. She did have the ability, but she didn't want to use her medical skills to harm people. Otherwise, she had many ways to make everyone in the Li family disappear from this world. There were some bottom lines and principles that couldn't be touched. As for Shuri Jiao, she only used some things to torture her. If she really wanted to harm her life, she would be even more direct. Jing Yunzhao's words made the grandmother and granddaughter's hearts tremble. A few minutes after she left, their hands were still trembling. Grandmother. I don't want to die. She's so vicious, what she said must be true. What should I do? What should I do? Please go and beg my grandfather to kick that good-for-nothing uncle out of the house, okay? Isn't it just changing your surname? Shut up. Before Shuri Jiao could finish, Lin Feng roared. What do you know? Lin Feng snorted again. If it was as simple as changing her surname, she would have done it long ago. Why would she wait until now? Right now, the most important thing wasn't the surname, but the meaning of the Li family's existence. If the old man announced to the public that Li Tianyi's surname was Jing, it would be tantamount to admitting that he had married into the Li family. It would be tantamount to surrendering everything in the Li family to someone else. At that time, who would have the right to inherit? It was Li Tianyi. It was Jing Yunzhao. What had she become? At that time, he would be looked down upon and scolded by others. Lin Feng's face turned ugly. Ask your grandfather to find more people in the next few days. Back then, there were so many disciples in the Jing clan. There must be some among them who were willing to help. I don't believe that she is the only one who can cure Jing Yunzhao. As for Li Tianyi, he probably couldn't touch him. Jing Yunzhao's expression just now was as if she wanted to eat them alive. If they angered her, she might even do something behind their backs. The old lady felt even more aggrieved. Yan Peng, this child, is too impulsive. The old lady suddenly said. With such high martial arts, he actually couldn't do anything to Jing Yunzhao. It must be that after seeing Jing Yunzhao's appearance, he couldn't restrain himself and gave himself away. At the side, Wan Xiaoxia frowned. Godmother, don't be angry. Let's think about whether or not we can get Yan Peng out first. Chapter 12:11. The old lady sighed and walked to the police station with Wan Xiaoxia and Shuri Jiao's help. She knew that whether Wan Yanping could be released depended on how much evidence the police had. When the time came, she would think of something in private. Of course, the evidence could be completely wiped out. If it really didn't work, she would let him stay in prison for a few days. As long as it wasn't an immediate death sentence, there was nothing to be afraid of. Moreover, technology was so advanced now. At worst, she could wait for him to change his face after he was released. Although it was a pity to lose his face, it was always good to have freedom. This Wan Yanping was strong and was a good dog for the Li family. Of course, she couldn't just give him up like that. However, Lin Feng was too naive at this time. Since Jing Yunzhao was willing to hand him over to the police station, he must have thought of a foolproof plan. After the three of them entered, they quickly mentioned Wan Yanping's name. However, when the police heard this, they looked at the three of them in surprise. Then, they said directly, "I'm sorry, no one can visit this person." Why? He's still a suspect now. There hasn't been a trial yet, right? Shuri Jiao quickly said. When she thought of brother Wang Yanping's suffering in prison, she felt her heart ache. This is Mayor Su's idea. In addition, the military also agreed. The trial will be completely confidential. You won't have the chance to see him in the future. The police saw that there was an old lady among them, so they were polite and told her everything they knew. This person was most likely going to be sentenced to death. As soon as the sentence was passed, it would definitely be executed immediately. Otherwise, if an accident happened and this highly dangerous person escaped, he would be a great threat to the public. Not to mention that they couldn't see him, even if it was a corpse, it would probably be used for research. These people had no right to take it back. When Wan Xiaoxia and Shuri Jiao heard this, they were dumbfounded. Do you know who we are? I don't care, I want to see brother Wang Yanping now. Shuri Jiao was going crazy. Brother Wang Yanping was so gentle and beautiful. How could he be a murderer? Were they really going to never see him again? Impossible. She was still thinking of marrying him and becoming his wife when she grew up. When the other party heard how Shuri Jiao addressed the murderer, he immediately felt a little disdainful. Shen Hong happened to be at the side, and when he heard that, he immediately said unhappily, "Miss, that Wang Yanping is not a good person. You keep calling him Big Brother Yanping, but do you know how many innocent girls your Big Brother Yanping has killed? Those people were as young as you, still in their prime, but he mercilessly took their lives. But from the looks of it, you haven't seen how they died, have you?" Shen Hong said sarcastically. Then, he threw a few photos over. Look, not only were they violated, they were also injured all over their bodies. He was going to cut off their flesh bit by bit. Do you still think he's a good person? How could there be such an idiot in this world? He had just returned to the country not long ago, but he had seen many pitiful people, so he had a sense of justice. In the past, he solved cases to satisfy his curiosity and excitement, but now, he wanted to redress the grievances of those innocent and kind victims. At this moment, when he saw the girl in front of him, he suddenly felt that she was far worse than Jing Yunzhao. Although Jing Yunzhao's hands should have been stained with blood, he knew better than her what was right and wrong. When had Shuri Jiao ever seen such a scary thing? The first photo disgusted her. She ran out and vomited beside the big stone lion at the entrance. Chapter 12:12. Shuri Jiao vomited until she was dizzy, and Ruan Xiaoxia's body trembled. She lowered her head slightly, and her eyes flashed. She looked particularly pitiful. "Godmother, you must save him. I only have him. Back then, Tianyi didn't marry me, and he delayed my life. I only have Yan Peng by my side. If even he is gone, what will I do? What will I do?" 2 lines of tears flashed across Ruan Xiaoxia's face. Her appearance made people feel sympathy for her. However, because of Shuri Jiao's brother Yan Peng, Shen Hong didn't have a good impression of the 3 people. He pretended that he didn't hear the woman's words. Lin Feng held her hand and patted it a few times. She revealed a caring and pitiful expression. "Can't you make an exception and let us meet?" Lin Feng pulled a long face and looked at Shen Hong in front of her. "I'm sorry, this person is an extremely dangerous person. No one can meet him," Shen Hong said without any trace of politeness. Although this request was made by Jing Yunzhao, he also thought that it was reasonable. A pervert who killed many innocent girls, what human rights did he have? Moreover, it was a fact that he knew martial arts. After meeting these 3 people, if he used some method to escape, then everyone's efforts during this period of time would be in vain. There might even be people who would be harmed in the future. Seeing Shen Hong so resolute, Lin Feng's old face became more and more embarrassed. Originally, her mood wasn't very good. Previously, she met Jing Yunzhao, that wild girl. She didn't expect that when she came to the police station, she would meet a person who didn't have good eyesight. He was just a small police officer. Did he really think he was a big shot? "What's your name?" Lin Feng said with a cold face. Shen Hong was stunned but quickly reacted. He picked up the sign in front of him and showed it to her. Then he smiled and said, "Shen Hong, if you want to pursue my responsibility, I will accompany you at any time." Lin Feng coldly snorted, but in her heart, she remembered this name. They came in anger, and the three left in anger. Shirijiao's face became uglier and uglier. She didn't know if it was a psychological factor, but she felt like her body was going to be crippled. Her whole body became more and more uncomfortable. "Grandma, am I going to die? I feel so uncomfortable now. I feel weak and itchy all over." In the car, Shirijiao leaned against Wan Xiaoxia and said. Lin Feng only had 2 daughters now, and the other one was not very old. She only had 1 grandchild, Shirijiao. Now that she heard Shirijiao's weak words, she was extremely distressed and wished that she was the one who was uncomfortable. "Jiao Jiao, be good. You won't die. No matter what I do, I'll definitely cure you. Don't worry." Lin Feng coaxed. When Wan Xiaoxia heard this, her expression changed slightly, but she didn't say anything. When Lin Feng and Shirijiao returned to the Li family, they immediately told Li Wenbo what Jing Yunzhao said. At first, Li Wenbo was still able to restrain his emotions, but when he heard the words change her surname, he was immediately enraged. In her dreams. Change her surname. Even if my son dies, his surname will still be Li. For so many years, how many people had said behind his back that he was not legitimate? Saying that he had seized the Jing family's assets. He could tolerate those things in the past, but he absolutely could not tolerate wanting to snatch back everything he had worked so hard to obtain. The Jing family. It was just an old and stubborn family. That woman, Jing Wenyue, married him just to carry on the family line. How could he, as a man, accept that? Moreover, that person had been dead for so many years. Now she wanted to seize power again. Wishful thinking. Chapter 12-13. However, when Li Wenbo found out that Wan Yanping had been arrested, he felt a bit annoyed. He glanced at Lin Feng and asked, "That policeman said the military was involved." "That's right. I think it's quite strange too," Lin Feng quickly replied. She wasn't surprised that Su Yuantek was involved. After all, that person wasn't a good person. However, when did the military stand on Su Yuantek's side? The military and government had always tried their best to distance themselves from each other so that people wouldn't think that there were things that couldn't be seen. Why would they suddenly? Jing Yunzhao has a man by her side. Li Wenbo quickly realized that something was wrong. However, after a while, he said to himself, her Yunling Pharmaceutical is a company that the military has a stake in. It's not strange that the military is helping her. However, the man you described. I think it's a bit strange. Li Wenbo was a bit worried. However, after thinking about it, if the other party was someone important, he would have spread the news long ago. However, until now, he hadn't found anything strange about him. It seemed that he was thinking too much. Jiao Jiao's illness. Lin Feng asked tentatively. I've already contacted a very famous doctor. He'll be here tomorrow. Let him take a look, Li Wenbo said impatiently. When Lin Feng heard this, she was overjoyed and didn't ask for anything else. The next day, the doctor arrived as expected. He had white hair and a youthful complexion. His face was full of wrinkles, but he had a pair of bright eyes. He looked very energetic. Not only that, from his appearance, he had a sage-like demeanor. Just by looking at his appearance, one couldn't help but believe in his ability. Shuri Jiao's condition was getting worse by the day. At this time, her entire body was tied to the bed to prevent her from scratching again. When the doctor saw this scene, he was shocked. However, he had seen insomnia before and immediately checked her pulse. With this, his brows furrowed deeper and deeper. "How is it?" Lin Feng and Li Shuyuan were both concerned. Shuri Jiao had already fainted so that she wouldn't cry out in pain when she woke up. The originally confident old man suddenly frowned and said, "I'm afraid, other than the head of the Jing family, no one can cure her. But it's really strange. Isn't the Jing clan's inheritance broken? How could anyone concoct such a medicine? Could it be a medicine left behind from the past?" The old man stroked his beard and said, "This little girl was really unlucky. She had taken the medicine from decades ago, and now, there were no two people who could cure her. Everyone knew that the Jing clan had a secret technique that only members of the Jing bloodline had the right to study. It was said that there were many precious acupuncture techniques with excellent effects. There were also many miraculous medicines that could cure strange diseases. Many years ago, many people went crazy over these things. However, these things were not easy to obtain because even if one obtained this secret technique, without the guidance of the previous generation, one would only be able to learn a little bit from it. That was why the old doctor was so curious. Li Wenbo choked. "Is there really no one who can cure this poison? Please take a closer look. There's no point in looking at it anymore. You know that I've only been a disciple of the Jing clan. I've never learned these core things. My father has only heard of them before. I advise you to prepare for your funeral." "Wait. You mean this medicine can kill?" Li Wenbo hurriedly asked. Chapter 12-14. Li Wenbo also knew some medical skills. He had already seen it, but no matter how he looked at it, he felt that this medicine only had a slight itching effect. No matter what, he couldn't associate it with a real poison. However, at this time, the old man glanced at him and said directly, "This medicine used to be made to restrain a kind of hallucinogenic drug. The person who takes it can't stop the itch and will scratch to clear their mind. Because of the interaction with the hallucinogenic grass, it won't cause spots. As long as the effect of the grass is gone, the effect of this medicine will naturally dissipate. However, that grass is a plant that existed a long time ago and is very difficult to find now. Even if you can find it, it can't counteract the effect of the medicine. Although this thing won't directly kill you, the one who has been poisoned is your biological granddaughter. The most important thing for a girl is her appearance. Now that she has been poisoned with this medicine, she has to endure this itch almost every day and night. She keeps scratching. No matter how good the medicine to stop the itch is, it won't work. Most importantly, she can't be saved now. Even if you help her endure it for a few months, can you endure it for a year and a half or even a long time? As long as you can't find the antidote, it won't be completely alleviated. If it goes on for a long time, her spirit." The old doctor didn't finish the rest of his words directly. However, Li Wenbo and Lin Feng, the old couple, understood what he meant. Once Shuri Jiao couldn't bear it anymore, she would self-harm. In serious cases, she would commit suicide. Even now, she had already begun to endlessly torture herself. She kept scratching her face and cheeks and couldn't stop at all. At this time, when Li Wenbo heard this, he was so angry that his chest was heaving up and down. Lin Feng and Li Shuyuan were even more distressed. Li Shuyuan hurriedly begged, "Dad, Jiao Jiao is your only granddaughter. If anything happens to her, how can we live?" "That's right, Uncle Wen. There aren't many members of our family now, and the outside world is already gossiping. If something happens to Jiao Jiao, how can we put our old faces?" Lin Feng also said. Her son died at the age of 17. If her granddaughter died, there would definitely be people who would say that the Li family's feng shui was wrong. Few children could live past the age of 20. When Li Wenbo heard this, his face turned pale. It was too difficult for him to agree to let his son change his surname. "Dad, it's just a change of surname. You can just say that you pity that woman because she doesn't have a family. Anyway, let's treat Jiao Jiao first. Anyway, Tianyi is of no use to the Li family if he's alive." Li Shuyuan hurriedly added, "As long as Jiao Jiao can live well, I'm willing to let her change her surname. In the future, she won't be surnamed sure, but Li. What do you think?" "Although I'm not young anymore, I can still give birth. We will definitely work hard to give birth to a son. When the time comes, he will also take the Li family surname. In the future, we will hand everything over to you. We will definitely not interfere in the child's education at all." Li Shuyuan had said almost everything she could. Li Wenbo was indeed tempted. He was already so old, and it was impossible for him to have a child in his old age. He could only count on these two daughters. Although his second daughter was good, he had always been worried that she would suddenly be unable to resist the temptation and get together with a man outside one day. At that time, his plan would be disrupted. However, if his eldest daughter was willing, after she recovers, you and your wife should go to the hospital for a checkup. If it doesn't work, try artificial insemination. Li Wenbo thought about it and compromised. Chapter 12-15. When Li Shuyuan heard her father's words, her old face couldn't help but redden a little. But when she looked at Shuri Jiao on the bed, she gritted her teeth and nodded. "Okay, as long as my Jiao Jiao is well, I'm willing to do anything," Li Shuyuan hurriedly said. It was just artificial, that's all. It was indeed embarrassing that she didn't do it before, but now that the fire was burning her eyebrows, she couldn't just watch her daughter die, right? And she knew her father's personality. Apart from giving birth to a son for the Li family, there was no other way to change his mind. Li Wenbo sighed, his gaze sinister. "That brat Jing Yun Zhao has the prescription in her hands, the military will definitely help her. If we want to turn the tables and restrain her, then we'll have to first find out where the medical book is. How about this, you go and contact her and settle Jiao Jiao's matter first. When Jiao Jiao recovers, I'll have my own ways." Lin Feng heard and nodded repeatedly. "Tianyi, forget it, send him away." Thinking of his son, Li Wenbo sighed. As a father, how could he not love his child? Especially since this child was extremely obedient and sensible, but the environment was different, that trace of love would become extremely fragile. The more outstanding this son was, the more he felt the shadow of the Jing family's bloodline in him. And that son of his had always been interested in medicine since he was young, as if this interest was imprinted in his bones. No matter how he tried to change him, he couldn't do it. Fortunately, this son of his was not tough and was considered cultured and refined, so he was easier to control. Otherwise, it would be a big problem. After Li Wenbo finished speaking, he walked away with his walking stick. At this time, Lin Feng hurriedly sent someone to deliver a message to Red-Crowned Crane Hall. Other than Red-Crowned Crane Hall, Lin Feng couldn't contact Jing Yunzhao from any other place. Although there was a school, there were very few students there who were familiar with her, and those who were familiar with her were stubborn and never talked much. Her whereabouts were mysterious, and it was really difficult to find her. At this time, Jing Yunzhao was helping Li Xiaoyun apply medicine. There was a bloody hole in his arm. It looked shocking, but only he thought it was a small injury. However, she didn't think of stopping him from continuing the mission. After all, everyone had their own ambitions. Li Xiaoyun was an extremely shrewd person. If he was afraid of death, he wouldn't have rushed forward. So, all she could do was to stay behind and wait for him to come back victorious. "Didn't I give you a lot of medicine before? Why didn't you bring it?" Jing Yunzhao asked as he applied the medicine. "The smell of those medicines is too strong. It's easy to expose the target after applying them," Li Xiaoyun replied seriously. "Won't the smell of blood expose the target?" Jing Yunzhao asked unhappily. Li Xiaoyun looked at her serious look and said softly, "The medicine I applied was mainly to suppress the smell of blood. Except for people with a good sense of smell like you, it's hard for others to find it. But you can develop some special medicine for me next time, so you don't have to worry." Li Xiaoyun was just saying it casually. However, Jing Yunzhao took it seriously. Those medicines of hers were very time-consuming. Some needed to be boiled for a long time, and some needed to be dried continuously. The reason why she spent so much time researching them was because they had good effects. But now that she couldn't use them, of course she had to eliminate them. Jing Yunzhao couldn't help but think about how to get the best of both worlds. At this time, she received a call from Red-Crowned Crane Hall. Hearing the message, the corners of her mouth curled up slightly, and a trace of satisfaction flashed in her eyes. Chapter 12-16. Li Wenba being willing to let Li Tianyi change his surname was definitely the biggest concession. It was just detoxification, she would not be the one to lose out. Now that Li Wenba sent someone to pass on the message, Jing Yunzhao directly discussed the date with the Li family. Even though she could wait, Shi Jiao couldn't. Thus, on the second day, before the sun had even risen, the whole family had already arrived. Jing Yunzhao arrived 2 hours late and only saw the heavy atmosphere in the outer hall. "Aren't you closing the business today?" Li Wenba asked coldly when he saw Jing Yunzhao. What he meant was that the Red-Crowned Crane Hall was too noisy. "When Elder Li was learning medicine, did Master teach you medical ethics?" Jing Yunzhao said lightly. If this Red-Crowned Crane Hall belonged to Li Wenba, he could close the pharmacy as he wished. However, this pharmacy had nothing to do with him, yet he wanted all the patients to make way for him. What a joke. Li Wenba's face was ashen, his eyes filled with displeasure. If this girl did not have the surname Jing, if she did not go against him, he would want her to inherit everything from the Li family. After all, her medical skills were very rare and she had a company in her hands. As long as she was loyal to the Li family, she could bring about great benefits in the future. However, it was a pity that she was a stubborn wild girl. "You're only good at talking." Li Wenba snorted and said, "I've brought this person here, hurry up and detoxify her." "Where's my father?" Jing Yunzhao sat in front of the table and asked directly. "I've already asked someone to send him here. After you cure Jiao Jiao, that person should be here." Li Wenba said again. "Do you think I'm a fool who can be easily fooled? What if you go back on your words after I cure her?" Jing Yunzhao said sarcastically and said directly, "I need to see him, and you have to promise to let him change his surname. I'll ask someone to take a picture of it as proof. Otherwise, Shi Jiao's life and death have nothing to do with me." "You evil creature. Li Wenbo pointed at her angrily. Really, really my good granddaughter. You've even learned to threaten me, haven't you? If you continue to act recklessly, just wait to be a child without parents. Jing Yunzhao did not give in. His face was cold as he prepared to put away his things. He looked as if he was about to leave. He opened his mouth and said coldly, "Thanks to you, I have been an orphan for more than 10 years. I have long been used to this kind of life. So what if I want to continue in the future? You can try to kill your only son. Let's see if it's you or me who feels the heartache." At this moment, Jing Yunzhao couldn't give in at all. As long as he let him see that he cared about his father's life, it would be tantamount to giving him something to use against him. However, Li Wenbo believed that she didn't care about Li Tianyi's life or death. After all, this little girl had lived outside for so many years, and so far, she hadn't interacted with Li Tianyi. Even if they were related by blood, how could they develop feelings for each other if they had never interacted with each other before? On the other hand, although he didn't like his son, he couldn't kill him with his own hands. What's more, he only had one son now. If he died, the outside world would definitely ridicule him. Good. You want to see your father, right? Fine, then wait first. Li Wenbo's mood was extremely bad. He had never suffered such a setback in his life. Even when he was under Jing Wenyue, he had never felt so ashamed. Chapter 12-17. Jing Wenyue was an extremely kind woman. The girls of that era were more or less gentle and virtuous. In addition, she studied medical books, so she was always more magnanimous than others. Even though she was also very intelligent and determined, she was still somewhat indecisive in some aspects. Looking at Jing Yunzhao's face, Li Wenbo, who was waiting, could not help but think of the past that had been buried in his heart for decades. That year, he had indeed been deeply in love with that woman. However, although the Li family had quite a bit of wealth, in terms of reputation and heritage, they could not compare to the Jing family. They could only rely on the Jing family to survive. Every time he saw Wenyu, he would feel a sense of inferiority, as if he was a crude and lowly person while she was a radiant light. He was also talented and had some strength, but because of his low status, he could never stand on equal footing with her. As for Mo Xingyan, he was noble and arrogant, so he conquered Jing Wenyue's heart. It was also at that time that he was ready to completely give up and marry Lin Feng. However, he did not expect Mo Xingyan to completely break off his relationship with Jing Wenyue. Moreover, Jing Wenyue publicly announced that she wanted to find a son-in-law and that she did not want a man with a high status. In terms of qualifications, no one was more suitable than him. When he thought of the woman he had admired for a long time, his blood boiled. He felt that he had to give it a try. Otherwise, he could only bow his head in front of her for the rest of his life. Therefore, he gave up on Lin Feng and chose Jing Wenyue. That woman, Jing Wenyue, was domineering and had excellent medical skills. She managed the Jing family well. At first, he was like a canary. Every day, he could do almost nothing but ask about her well-being. Fortunately, he also had the Li family behind him. He tried his best to stand firm, especially when Jing Wenyue was pregnant. The entire Jing family had to be taken care of by him. In fact, he was already satisfied when Jing Wenyue was pregnant. His wife was virtuous and gentle, and his child was about to be born. However, there were always some blind people in this world. Back then, he replaced Jing Wenyue to look after the branch business in the neighboring province. In the end, the other party mocked and ridiculed him, saying that he was just a gigolo. Once the child was born, even if he died, no one would care. Yes, Jing Wenyue's heart had never belonged to him. Even though she did not have any contact with Mo Jingyan after their marriage, he could still tell that the woman was polite to him and loved Mo Jingyan. Although he had taken the initiative to demand everything, there was still a trace of unwillingness in his heart. Which man would be willing to let his woman have someone else in her heart? Which man could tolerate his wife being above him in every aspect? In fact, he clearly knew what he was to the Jing family. He was just a tool to provide the Jing family with seeds. Even if it was someone else, it would be fine as long as they could help Jing Wenyue give birth to a child. For the rest of his life, he would either lower his head forever, or he would devise a plan to completely turn things around. He chose the latter. Although Wenyue had died, he had gained many other things, such as his dignity. It had been decades, but he had never regretted it. Sometimes, he had even forgotten Jing Wenyue's face. It was only at this moment that he saw Jing Yunzhao, a woman who was even more arrogant than Jing Wenyue. She was clearly a descendant of his bloodline, but she did not resemble him at all. She was a little like Jing Wenyue, a little like Tian Yi, and even a little like Su Xianlan in terms of appearance. However, she did not resemble him in any way. How ironic. She was clearly his granddaughter. Chapter 12-18. Li Wenba's eyes were like those of a venomous wolf, constantly staring at Jing Yunzhao. However, Jing Yunzhao acted as if she didn't see anything. Occasionally, they would meet each other's eyes, but she would also mercilessly retaliate. Half an hour later, a car arrived at the entrance of the Celestial Crane Hole. Li Tianyi was brought out. He sat in a wheelchair. His complexion was worse than before. He was pale and weak. His lips were dry and his body was thin like a bag of bones. "She's here. Can you treat her?" Li Wenba said unhappily. "Let's make a deal." Jing Yunzhao said coldly and invited the reporter out. "I'll have to trouble you to take a video first." Li Wenba gritted his teeth. If not for Lin Feng reminding him that his granddaughter was seriously ill, he would have left with his pride. "Okay." Li Wenba faced the camera. "I, Li Wenba, promise that as long as you cure my granddaughter's illness, I'll agree to let my son change his surname and let him inherit the Jing bloodline." "Very good. Since you're so sincere, I won't make things difficult for you. I also promise to cure her itch." After Jing Yunzhao spoke, a few of the medical apprentices came forward and pushed Li Tianyi's wheelchair over. At this moment, under Jing Yunzhao's silent approval, the Li family's people helped Shi Jiao into the consultation room. "When I'm treating her, I hope that you all can remain silent. No matter what kind of sounds or movements are made inside, you all must remain calm and not rush in. Otherwise, if anything happens to her during the treatment process, it won't be my responsibility anymore." Jing Yunzhao spoke again. "Jing Yunzhao, don't play tricks. If anything happens to Jiao Jiao, shut up." Li Shuyuan was only halfway through her sentence when Li Wenba shouted at her. Jing Yunzhao didn't care about them and closed the door to the consultation room. Shi Jiao looked at her and started to panic. Jing Yunzhao's brows didn't even move as she raised her hand and took out the rope she had prepared. "What are you doing?" Shi Jiao was flustered. "Of course it's to treat your illness. If you don't want to cooperate, then please leave." "It's none of my business even if you die of ugliness," Jing Yunzhao said expressionlessly. Shi Jiao always felt that Jing Yunzhao's appearance at this moment was a little scary, and she couldn't help but be afraid. However, when she thought of her illness, she suddenly became discouraged. Her family had looked for many doctors, but none of them had been able to cure her. Now, she had placed all her hopes on Jing Yunzhao, so he couldn't refuse any of her requests. Shuri Jiao's eyes were filled with tears and she looked extremely pitiful. She relaxed and allowed Jing Yunjiao to tie her up with the rope. Her body was completely fixed and she couldn't move at all. Cousin. You are my cousin, you must help me, I beg you. Shuri Jiao pleaded again. Jing Yunjiao pursed his lips into a smile, but didn't say anything. Cousin. Why didn't I think of her as my cousin when I released Xiao Haiqing's past? Although Shuri Jiao called her cousin sweetly, in her heart, she only treated her as a wild girl. She had never paid attention to her, and she was well aware of this. After controlling Shuri Jiao, Jing Yunjiao took out a small and thin blade from the medicine box next to him. He looked at the black spots on her body and directly used it. Ah! Suddenly, an earth-shattering scream resounded through the medicine hall. Although the medicine hall's rooms were soundproof, the people closest to the consultation room were still shocked. Chapter 12-19. Jing Yunjiao had already tied Shuri Jiao up. No matter how painful it was, Shuri Jiao could only endure it. However, when the people outside heard this, they broke out in cold sweat. Mom, save me, ah. Mom, it really hurts. Jing Yunjiao, you bastard. I will definitely kill you. It hurts. I was wrong. I was wrong. Li Shuyuan's heart ached when she heard her daughter's mournful cries. However, the door to the consultation room was closed and she couldn't see what was going on inside. She could only worry helplessly. However, after a while, the cries didn't stop. Not only that, but her voice also became hoarse and she cried even harder than before. This. Mom, Dad, what's wrong with Jiao Jiao? Isn't it just treating an itch? Why is it like this? Let's go in and take a look. Did Jing Yunjiao do something to harm Jiao Jiao? Li Shuyuan said worriedly. Li Wenbao also had a headache. His medical skills were still at the same level as when he was young. Otherwise, he wouldn't have to wait outside until now. Jing Yunjiao, this girl, was a vile person who would seek revenge for the smallest grievance. She was probably purposely tormenting Jiao Jiao right now. But no matter what, she would definitely treat this person. If they were to barge in now, then they would really lose. Wait outside. Li Wenbao said directly. Li Shuyuan's tears immediately fell. At this time, Jing Yunjiao didn't stop the knife in her hand. There was indeed a simple and easy way to treat this illness, but the spots on the body weren't that easy to remove. Even with medication, it would take a year and a half. The fastest way was to cut off the spots and let them grow back. Although the new skin was different, it couldn't be seen with makeup. It hurts already. Cousin, do you know how you got all these years of happiness? As Jing Yunjiao treated her, he continued coldly, the grandfather you respect the most is just a thief who steals other people's wealth. Back then, when my grandmother was looking for a son-in-law, he delivered himself to our doorstep and promised to be loyal to the Jing family forever. However, my grandmother died in childbirth. The Jing family is a medical family, so protecting the baby is not a problem at all. Therefore, I don't even need to go back and verify it myself. I know that it was definitely him who did it. How could he do that to his own wife? He has no humanity at all. His wife is already dead. Even if he were to remarry, he should have taken good care of his ex-wife's child and fulfilled his promise to let my father inherit the Jing family. But what did he do? He actually changed my father's surname to Li. That's not all. The Jing and Su families are close friends. It's not an exaggeration to say that my parents are a match made in heaven. But your grandfather spared no expense to separate us. If he hadn't gotten the news back then and insisted on going to Huaning County to bring my father back, my mother wouldn't have ended up like that. My father wouldn't have been forced to cripple his legs and walk around like a zombie for so many years. As for me, I wouldn't have had to go through that kind of suffering. As Jing Yunzhao spoke, she suddenly laughed. Every single cent you spend now belongs to the Jing family. You people don't have any blood relations with the Jing family, yet you're occupying the Jing family's things. Don't you think it's shameful? At this time, Shuri Jiao only felt extreme pain and was about to go crazy. At this time, Jing Yunzhao's voice entered her ears word by word. Even if she didn't want to hear a single word, she still heard it clearly. Chapter 12:20. Shuri Jiao felt that at this moment, she would rather die. Jing Yunzhao's face in front of her was too terrifying. His voice, which used to make her jealous, now sounded like a demon from hell, causing her to tremble. Jing Yunzhao couldn't really let Shuri Jiao die from the pain, so she also used some anesthetics. However, it was impossible for her to completely anesthetize Shuri Jiao, because the last thing she wanted was to see someone she hated live happily. Although the person in front of her was arrogant, her arrogance had almost caused Hai Qing to die. Sooner or later, she would have to pay for what she did. A turtledove occupying a magpie's nest won't have a good ending in the end. Biao Mei, when you go back, you have to properly advise that good grandfather of yours. If he obediently spits out everything that belongs to the Jing family, then on account of the fact that he's an elder, I won't force him into a dead end. Do you think I'll let him off? As time passed, Jing Yunzhao continued to speak slowly. It was like a person playing with a doll, talking to a doll. Ugh. I know. Ugh. Shuri Jiao's tears couldn't fall, because the salt had stained her wound and it was too painful. Biao Mei, since I can save you today, I can also think of ways to let you experience the pain you're experiencing right now. That's why you better learn to be more obedient when you go back. Otherwise, I won't be so gentle the next time. When that time comes, I'll think of ways to slice off your flesh piece by piece and stick it on. What do you say? Ugh. Shuri Jiao groaned with difficulty, her entire body was weak. Oh right, from what I see, your grandfather doesn't really love you, right? You screamed like that just now, but he still wanted to save face and refused to let anyone come in to see you. He knew that your anesthetic didn't have much effect, but he still endured it. And your parents, they only listened to your grandfather and watch you suffer in front of me. Ah, how pitiful. After Jing Yunzhao finished speaking, he began to bandage her wound. Shuri Jiao didn't bleed much. Jing Yunzhao used the best hemostatic medicine, so the effect was definitely very good. At that moment, Shuri Jiao was trembling, and her eyes were filled with hatred. In the past, she didn't believe it. She didn't believe that her family had really taken over the Jing family's property. But now, she had no choice but to believe it. Her family had so much influence, opened so many hospitals, and knew so many people. But why couldn't anyone treat her illness? Why was Jing Yunzhao able to do it? Also, ever since she was young, her grandfather had always been wary of that useless uncle of hers. It was the same for the rest of the family. They would always mention the surname Jing. At that time, she didn't think too much about it, but now she understood. What her grandfather cared about was the money, not her. The only reason her grandfather agreed to save her was because her mother agreed to give birth to another boy. They just stood outside and watched her scream over and over again, but they didn't even respond. How could Grandpa be so cold-blooded? During the most painful time, Jing Yunzhao had ravaged his will over and over again. His firm belief in the past had begun to crumble and become fragmented. And this treatment took a full hour. When it was completely over, Shurijiao's body was wrapped in gauze from head to toe. She looked like a mummy, but just as Jing Yunzhao had promised, although it still hurt a little, it didn't itch anymore. Shurijiao's gaze towards Jing Yunzhao was filled with fear and dread. Really, she wouldn't dare to do it again. Chapter 12:21. When Li Wenba and the others came in, they saw Shurijiao wrapped up like a dumpling. They were a little stunned, but at the same time, they were a little angry. What's going on? Why is she wrapped up like this? It's just cutting her flesh and changing her skin. Don't make a fuss. Jing Yunzhao glanced at Li Wenba and said casually. These 4 simple words shocked Lin Feng and Li Shuyuan. Li Shuyuan's body went soft and she almost fainted. Cutting her flesh, changing her skin. Jing Yunzhao. Lin Feng roared. How dare you torture my Jiao Jiao? Old lady, what are you pretending for? Didn't you already know what to do the moment you sent her to me? Besides, she shouted so loudly. Didn't you hear her? Now you're hit by these 4 words. Why pretend to be kind in front of her? Jing Yunzhao said bluntly. Li Shuyuan loved her daughter. That was definitely true. However, Lin Feng and Li Wenba might not be the same. They might spoil Shurijiao a little, but they wouldn't care too much about her. Previously, she only mentioned the condition of changing her surname. If it was something else, such as asking the Li family to completely repent to the outside world, Li Wenba would definitely not agree. Lin Feng choked and stopped arguing with her. She quickly walked to Shurijiao. My Jiao Jiao, are you okay? Grandma is really distressed. Don't cry in my medicine hole. She's not dead yet. If you've seen enough, then get out. Jing Yunzhao said bluntly. What do you mean? Lin Feng was stunned and said, We can't take her away. You can take her away. You can remove the gauze yourself. If you don't bandage it properly and it gets inflamed, then it's your fault. Jing Yunzhao said directly. Lin Feng's body trembled. Li Wenba glanced at his granddaughter. He was extremely annoyed. She was really a money loser. If it weren't for the fact that he didn't have a grandson or a son who could give birth to a grandson, why would he be angry with a junior like Jing Yunzhao? Enough. We've lost enough face. Let's go. Li Wenba said angrily. With that, Li Wenba walked out. Lin Feng always followed her husband's words. She glanced at her granddaughter and left reluctantly. Only Li Shuyuan, the mother, looked distressed. She cried a few times before leaving. Look, this is your grandpa and grandma, Jing Yunzhao smiled. Once the consultation room was empty, she opened her mouth to speak. Shurijiao's eyes were filled with tears. She felt wronged, but she could not refute. A trace of hatred took root and sprouted. Since Jing Yunzhao had treated her, he had naturally put in a lot of effort. Apart from the fact that the anesthetic effect was not satisfactory at the beginning, he had also made people do their best to take care of her and did not mess around. Father, let me take a look at your condition first, Jing Yunzhao said to Li Tianyi after settling Shurijiao. Compared to calling him father, father was too intimate, so she couldn't say it out loud for a while. Li Tianyi slowly opened his eyes and looked at her. Zhao, where's your mother? Father, she's been missing for a long time. I haven't seen her, Jing Yunzhao said with a flicker in her eyes. Don't lie to me. Li Tianyi smiled bitterly. He looked at his daughter who was squatting in front of him and taking her pulse. He reached out and touched her head. You've grown up. Father is sorry for making you suffer so much, however, you've surprised and satisfied me. You're not as weak as I was back then. Otherwise, you wouldn't have hurt her. She's already gone, right? If her whereabouts were still unknown, you wouldn't have been so heavy-handed with Jiao Jiao, and you wouldn't have been so decisive. Chapter 12:22. Li Tianyi saw things very clearly. He had a heart that could see through the affairs of the world, so he was less aggressive. Although there was a gloomy and vicious aura around him, he was still different from Jing Yunzhao. He was still a modest gentleman, modest and polite, and treated people with respect. At this moment, Jing Yunzhao looked into his eyes and felt ashamed of his own inferiority. Father, if mother was no longer around, what would you do? Jing Yunzhao pursed his lips, thought for a moment, and asked. She couldn't hide it from her father at all, because he knew better than anyone else. All these years, there was no difference between being alive and being dead. Don't worry, I won't do anything drastic. Li Tianyi's expression softened slightly, and he continued, Lana wants me to be alive more than your grandfather. No matter what, I will take her place to see you get married and have children in the future. I have to make sure that you are living well, then I can be right to her. His wife was the most forgiving woman in the world, with an exquisite heart. She was like the white moonlight, untainted by any dust, and also a cinnabar mole branded in his heart. From the moment he found out that she had gone missing, he had a bad premonition. Slowly, as time passed, he had long thought of the result, and had the ability to bear it. Seeing his expression, Jing Yunzhao let out a sigh of relief. Father, it's best that you think this way. In the future, I will take good care of you on behalf of mother. Your body is currently a little weak, but there are no other problems. You just need to eat more warm and nourishing food. In 2 or 3 months, your complexion should be more or less recovered. But this leg, Jing Yunzhao said, frowning. This leg was a chronic disease, and it wasn't completely impossible to cure it. It definitely needed to be slowly nourished, and it would take at least 2 or 3 years for there to be some feeling in it. The main reason was that father hadn't nursed it well all these years. Not only that, he had even allowed it to deteriorate bit by bit. From the beginning, both legs were crippled to the current lower body paralysis. The muscles in his legs had completely atrophied, and it was too difficult to cure it. Even if he could walk again, there would definitely be repercussions. There's no need to treat this leg, Li Tianyi suddenly said. He touched his knee and smiled, the current situation is very good, I'm very satisfied. Jing Yunzhao was stunned for a moment, and there was some astonishment in his eyes, and then there was some heartache. Now, Li Wenba can't do anything to you, and he doesn't have the right to force you to marry Wan Xiaoxia. Then why? Zhao, I heard that you have someone you like, right? Li Tianyi changed the subject. Jing Yunzhao was dazed, but he quickly nodded. If he's no longer here, what will you do? Li Tianyi asked him with a gentle smile. He and Xianlan were both very gentle. They didn't like to fight, and they didn't like to be unfriendly with others. No matter what they did, they liked to leave some face for others. Even to the most evil people, they would never be ruthless. And to themselves, they were even more benevolent. However, Jing Yunzhao's daughter was different. She had a strong, fierce, and even her gaze was more determined than the husband and wife. Towards the Li family, who still had blood relations with her, she was cold, indifferent, and even resentful. This was why she was destined to not be a simple character. In fact, he didn't know what the real head of the Jing family should be like, but he knew that he definitely didn't fit the bill. Although the blood of the Jing family flowed in his body, and it was natural for him to be surnamed Jing, his living environment had shaped his personality, and he was destined to be far from the Jing family. Chapter 12:23. Li Tianyi smiled. He knew that he wasn't the one who could support the Jing family, but now that he saw his daughter, he understood that this was how the head of the Jing family should be like. She was just like the Su family's elder Su and Su Yuantek, proud, decisive, scheming, and capable. A heartless person could only be a good doctor, but he couldn't bear the pressure of 1,000 years of inheritance. Therefore, instead of being controlled by his father all these years, it would be better to say that he had been hiding all this time. He had never thought about inheriting the Jing family, nor did he think about doing anything for his deceased mother. All he thought about was himself, and because of this, he deserved to end up like this. At this moment, Jing Yunzhao's brows were slightly furrowed, and a trace of hesitation flashed across her eyes. If Li Xiaoyun was no longer around, what would happen to her? She really hadn't thought about this because he had always been around all these years, so she didn't have any doubts or considerations in this regard at all. Just like this time when Li Xiaoyun returned injured, in her eyes, he seemed to be omnipotent. Even if there were occasional failures, he definitely wouldn't fall the next time. Because he was Li Xiaoyun, a legend from the moment he was born. How could he not be around? But now that her father mentioned it, she felt a little uncomfortable in her heart. If he was no longer around, she would definitely feel that something was missing. No matter how wonderful her life was, she would still feel that something was wrong. If she had to find another man to marry and have children with, she wouldn't be able to do it. But in this life, she didn't live for Li Xiaoyun alone, so her life would continue. Jing Yunzhao looked at her father. He wasn't willing to treat his legs now because the person he cared about was no longer around, so it didn't matter how his body was. Or rather, he still felt guilty. Her mother had sacrificed her life, and he felt that if he lived too well, he would feel guilty and heartbroken. The two of them were together for happiness, but it was also to torture each other, right? Jing Yunzhao fell silent. Since he was unwilling, she chose to respect him and did not force him. After all, not being able to use his legs would not hinder his life. Jing Yunzhao used to be a loner, so it was not a problem for her to live in the Su family. However, it was different now. Everyone in the Su family was somewhat repulsed by her father, especially her grandfather. If he saw her father often, he would definitely feel uncomfortable. Therefore, after thinking about it, she still wanted to buy a new house in the capital. The Su family had more than one property, but it was not suitable for her father to use it. In the end, Jing Yunzhao simply chose a relatively large villa. When the time came, he would hire a few bodyguards and nannies to take care of her. This way, he could rest assured when she went to school. However, the location should not be too far away from the Su family. In the end, Jing Yunzhao decided on a place. After dealing with Shuri Jiao's matter, he would let Li Wenbo announce to the public that he had changed his surname and go through the procedures. Shuri Jiao's situation was rather special, so she stayed in the Immortal Crane Hall for a relatively long time. Other than the first day, Li Wenbo never came again. Other than Li Shuyuan, who was her mother, only Lin Feng came frequently. However, she did not stay for too long each time, and she did not have a pleasant expression. Jiao Jiao, Mom has thought about it. When you recover, you will go abroad for a period of time. It is quiet outside, and you can also relax. Li Shuyuan coaxed Shuri Jiao and said softly. Shuri Jiao glanced at her, her eyes misty. She opened her mouth, but because her mouth was small, only a muffled sound came out. Her words were unclear. Jiao Jiao, what did you say? Mom doesn't understand. Do you want to write it down? Chapter 1224. Li Shuyuan was really confused and could only stare at her daughter. Jing Yunzhao was at the side watching the medicine boy apply the medicine. When she saw Shi Jiao's anxious and pitiful eyes, she sneered, "Even I can understand it, but as a mother, you don't understand." "You can understand. Then tell me, what did she just say?" Li Shuyuan said angrily. Jing Yunzhao raised his eyebrows. "She asked if you don't want her anymore, if Li Wenbo hates her and doesn't want to see her anymore." "Nonsense, my Jiao Jiao wouldn't think that way," Li Shuyuan immediately retorted. However, as soon as she finished speaking, she felt her daughter's burning and aggrieved gaze. She kept nodding her head, her face full of curiosity. She was a little surprised and flustered. "Jiao Jiao, how could you?" Li Shuyuan was confused and quickly said, "Your grandfather obviously loves you, how could he not want you? Otherwise, he wouldn't have sent you here for treatment, right? Look, for you, he doesn't even want his son." Shi Jiao shook her head, clenched her fists, lowered her head, and big teardrops fell from her eyes. She didn't believe that her grandfather had already given up on her. She used to think that she was doted on, but now she understood that in her grandfather's eyes, nothing was more important than a son. If her mother didn't use the matter of giving birth to a child to him, he wouldn't have agreed to let that uncle change his surname. He was greedy and took other people's things. He definitely didn't want to be pointed at behind his back and scolded. Only she was stupid enough to think that her grandfather was innocent. Anyway, her life and everything else was not as important as her grandfather's reputation and being the successor of the Li family. She understood. Li Shuyuan was a little flustered when she saw her daughter like this. She felt that her daughter seemed to have changed. She wasn't as simple and pure as before. She seemed to have more ideas. However, after thinking about it carefully, it was normal for her to be sensible after experiencing so much. With Jing Yunzhao around, Shi Jiao's condition recovered quickly. Not long after, her face was scarred, and the itch was completely gone. However, she still insisted on living in Immortal Crane Hall, as if she suddenly had a very deep prejudice against the Li family. But in Li Shuyuan's eyes, her daughter was just worried that her condition would worsen after leaving Immortal Crane Hall, so she let her do as she pleased. But since Shi Jiao had recovered, it was time for Li Wenbo to fulfill his promise. After choosing a good day, Li Wenbo finally announced to the public that from now on, there would only be Jing Tianyi in this world, and no Li Tianyi. But he said that he sympathized with his wife's family, so although many people thought it was strange, many people didn't say anything. However, after Li Wenbo made it clear to the public, Jing Yunzhao also anonymously posted a few photos. The people in the photos were the scene of Li Wenbo's family coming to seek medical treatment. Li Wenbo was the founder of the hospital. When he took over the Jing family, he quickly changed the clinic to Western medicine. At that time, he was scolded by countless people for worshipping foreigners. But after all, the things and skills of foreigners were becoming more and more popular in the country, so Li Wenbo wasn't scolded for long before he turned the tables and made a lot of money. At that time, many doctors who came back from abroad worked under him, and he was in the limelight for a while. But now, the great Li Wenbo actually brought his family to Immortal Crane Hall to seek medical treatment. This made people wonder if the doctors in Mingyi Hospital were too bad and couldn't treat the illness. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.